Jaime, you got my no vote on.
But a very tired
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting, September 10th, 2013. Can we all rise for the pledge led by Supervisor Rivas?
Ready, salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for acknowledgement of certificate of posting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. Now is the opportunity for the public to step forward to address the board on items not on the agenda this morning. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Yeah, Brandy Garcia.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Brandy Garcia. I'm the field representative for Assemblymember Luis Alejo, and I'm here to invite you and the public to join our Senior Scam Stopper next Wednesday at the Hollister Community Center just across the street. We're partnering with Jóvenes de Antaño as well as the Contractor State Licensing Board to bring some experts to talk about senior scams, information relating to home and auto repair, telecommunications, identity theft, Medicare, and more. Please feel free to come out, and it is free to the public. It's from 10 to 12 next Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Marvin Jones.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you, board members. Today's lesson is more or less on relativity or relevance, maybe. Saw an article recently where the greenhouse gas methane has really jumped up in concentration, going from 600, 800 units up to 1,600, 1,800 units. It's much more efficient than carbon dioxide at absorbing heat, causing global warming. And then I looked at the units, and they were in parts per billion, not the parts per million that we're used to with carbon dioxide. So, you know, there are more wetlands and more marsh gases. There's more methane in the atmosphere. But then that's less than 2 parts per million. We get all upset about that when it was 1,600, 1,800 units, whatever the units happen to have been. Good reason to get rid of cattle in San Benito County. You remember what used to be in the ERR of the general plan, get rid of the cattle in San Benito County. But 2 parts per million, that's noise level. 400 parts per million carbon dioxide back in the spring, probably less than that now. But gotten upset about 50 to 100 parts per million carbon dioxide. Water vapor is just like carbon dioxide. It absorbs infrared radiation, heats the atmosphere. On a nice, good, cold day, frosty morning, we had some last winter, frost on your windshield, you're speaking of 4,000 parts per million water vapor. Very dry, cold and dry. And that's at, you know, what, 60, 70% relative humidity. We're getting into September time frame. The Santa Ana winds will probably be blowing down south. We'll get some dry air around here, maybe 80, 85 degrees. Again, 90 degrees. We may have 10, 15% humidity. I've heard of number 9. The first year we were out here, it blew my mind. I didn't know it ever got that dry. 9% humidity. But 10% humidity, 85 degrees, you're speaking of 4,000 parts per million. We're worried about the 50 parts per million from carbon dioxide. Go the other side of the Mississippi where it gets hot and humid. I was at Eglin Air Force Base doing some work one time, and it was 100 degrees at lunchtime, and we went back out in the field and it started raining. Now that's humid. It may have only been 80 degrees. Temperature dropped, 90% humidity. You're speaking of 40,000 parts per million infrared absorbing gases in the atmosphere, and we're really worried about the 50 to 100 parts per million carbon dioxide that's changed. So it's relative. Watch your units. What's really important? What agenda do you have? And my time is up, and I'll see you next meeting. Bye-bye.
We'll look forward to next meeting to hear the rest of the story.
Elizabeth Corona.
Good morning. My name is Felicitas Corona. When home care workers fought for community first choice option, we fought to improve our program and to improve home care and better our lives. That was me, right? We did not meant that to be a reason for disinvestment in our community. We will organize our committee to understand and to support us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Belén Martinez.
Good morning. Morning. Chair and supervisors. My name is Belén Martinez. When home care workers fought in Sacramento last year for coordinated care initiative, we fought to improve our IHSS program, improve our care, and improve our lives. We wish that you strongly consider raising our wages by $1. When there was savings for our county because of coordinated care, we didn't want it to be a reason to disinvest in home care. Keep investing the same amount to IHSS and give us a living wage. We don't have benefits. We don't have sick days, holidays, vacation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Captain Stallman.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the board for allowing us a couple minutes to introduce our new public affairs officer for the Hollister-Gilroy office. This is Officer Herb Kellogg, and he will be taking over the public information duties for the office. I do want to encourage not only the board but members of the public that if you do have some traffic safety issues or things of concern, get a hold of our office, get a hold of Herb, and we will do what we can to address those concerns. I know Sheriff Thompson came to us and asked for us to assist him in doing some school zone patrols. We found that those types of projects resonate throughout the state, just putting a patrol unit in a school zone to try to slow people down and get people to play well together. So, you know, those are some innovative ideas that actually come from the grassroots and come from the concerns of citizens. So, again, if you do have any concerns about traffic issues and safety issues in the county, get a hold of the sheriff or the CHP if it's traffic. Get a hold of Herb, and we'll do what we can. So, Herb, you got a phone?
I do. We also have an upcoming event next week, Tuesday, September 17th, at the local Kmart, and we are providing a service to install car seats. And so that is open to the public, and it is being announced. There are flyers out to be able to make sure that the car seats are installed properly for the community. So that is Tuesday, September 17th from 2 to 5 p.m. at the Kmart. And I look forward to serving the public in the Hollister. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. San Diego County is grateful for everything that the CHP does for us to make our roads safer, and the partnerships you have with our law enforcement agencies here in our county. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can tell you we have a great relationship with the sheriff in this county, so he's a wonderful man, and we dialogue in a very, very positive way. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Richmond.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Marty Richmond from Hollister. A few weeks ago, I got up here and I made a mistake. I blamed the board here for failing to come up with a plan for splitting the sales tax within the county. That was a mistake. You are not responsible for the fact that we can't do that, and I blame you, and if I'm big enough to blame you, I got to be big enough to stand up and say I was wrong. I have since checked on it, and it turns out the problem lies with the state. The Board of Equalization won't allow you to split, it appears the Board of Equalization will not allow you to split the tax for reasons that I don't understand. Apparently, it's too complex for them to have more than one tax rate in the jurisdiction, although on the apportionment side, as I wrote a few weeks ago, they have 4,200 different rates within the state of California, more than 40 of them just here in the county, taken out to 8 decimal points. So they make our auditor distribute the funds to 8 decimal points to 40 or so, 42, whatever the number is, 41, different taxing entities. But if we say, can we split it in 2, they say, nope, that would just not make the grade. So please accept my public apology. Since I blamed you publicly, next time I guess I'll have to blame you privately, so I'll only have to make private apologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and Mr. Richmond, don't worry about it. We're used to getting blamed for stuff that we're not responsible for. Any other speakers? Anybody else would like to address the board? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to department head announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do have a few announcements. We have Steve Wittry. He's our Director of Public Works, has a department head announcement.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I just wanted to let you know that after several years of strife and troubles, the Stonegate Water Project appears to be coming to an end. We got approval from the Department of Public Health yesterday to operate the well that we installed for that process, so we are now permitted to operate a secondary potable service for Stonegate well. So that community has a backup water system as of today, essentially. A temporary permit was issued yesterday. Our full permit should be issued in about 2 weeks or by the end of the month or so. So I just want to let you know that that's one thing that we can hopefully put to bed. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
1 second, Steve. Supervisor De La Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, I've been trying to get a hold of you. I've gone to your office, and I know you're a businessman, and I've actually even asked some of your staff members to give me your cell phone number, and I've called you twice, and I still haven't gotten a response as of 9:15 this morning. I don't know, is it your staff members are giving me the wrong numbers and they really don't want me to talk to you, or
Probably so.
Yeah, I'm beginning to believe that. Or is it something that just your phone just doesn't like my calls coming in? I don't know. You got to help me here, so.
Well, I can give you my cell phone after the
Okay,
meeting here. And
I
contact
appreciate
you
it. Thank you.
All right, yes, we have another announcement from our Health and Human Services Department. This is going to be from Enrique, and he's our Deputy Director of Health and Human Services.
Good morning, members of the board and the public. I'm Enrique Arriola with the Health and Human Service Agency. I'm here to give an update on behalf of Maria Corona, the interim director, who is out of the country on vacation. She wanted me to share with the board and the public that we are 21 days away from open enrollment with Affordable Care Act and the healthcare reform. And the coverage, as you may know, begins on the 1st of 2014, so that is 82 days away, so it's coming really fast. Two main options for which people will be eligible for are medical expansion and tax subsidy exchange-based coverage. Staff is still undergoing intense training to get us prepared to enroll all residents eligible under this plan. And Monterey County will serve as our call center. I think despite our best efforts to have everything ready, I think the BOS still needs to be aware of some key implementation factors. We continue to need clear policy from the state, and as you may know, the state has not given clear policy and direction on different items. There is no single streamlined application that is finalized yet. New eligibility rule policy is not fully defined. CWDA and counties are working with the state to have meet the enrollment target date of next month, October the 1st. And C4 and CalHER's interface has been delayed. So staff is still working hard, and once everything gets going, we will have workload issues. Under managed care, the governor's 2012-2013 budget expands managed care into 28 fee-based counties, which San Benito County is one of those 28 counties. Anthem Blue Cross was chosen to be the plan here in this county. It was determined that San Benito County could not have just one plan. San Benito County is not a county organized healthcare system. Through negotiations, it was decided that San Benito County will have passive enrollment. What passive enrollment means is that beneficiaries have the option to enroll into Anthem, or they may stay with a regular Medi-Cal, which is that fee-for-service. Only family and children aid codes are subject to the passive enrollment at this time. Senior persons with disabilities will become subject to passive enrollment sometime in 2014. The initial notice was already sent to county residents or beneficiaries on the 4th of this month, informing them of this. If the beneficiaries who are subject to passive enrollment do not choose to stay with fee-based service, they will be passively enrolled in Anthem. Our health care options representative started already on the 3rd, and is available to the Medi-Cal beneficiaries regarding this transaction into managed care. So Health and Human Services is working really hard. Staff is getting training. But Maria wanted me to share a few of her notes.
Okay, I'm sure there's a couple of questions from the board, Enrique, on that. Supervisor Barrios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Enrique, it's my understanding that if they don't opt to stay in the passive, in the Medi-Cal, that they will automatically be switched over to Anthem. Is that correct?
That is correct. They will be passively enrolled into Anthem if they choose not to stay.
Okay. And then my other question is that Anthem Blue Cross was going to make an effort to bring stakeholders together for a meeting. Supervisor De La Cruz and I were kind of waiting for them to do that so that we could join them, so that we could set up some sort of communication so that there is participation from providers, stakeholders, and if there's any questions, any concerns, we can address those. Have they said anything about doing that in the very near future?
I'm sorry, I'm actually not aware of that. I could certainly ask if any staff is here. If not, when Maria comes back,
yeah, and this came directly from them. It really wasn't through HHSA, but I thought maybe you might have heard. They were here at the podium when they said, we're going to try to have a meeting, or we're going to have a meeting, bring stakeholders together, but evidently they haven't gotten to that yet.
I haven't been made aware of that.
Okay. Thank you, but we'll check with them.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz, you have anything to add?
Yeah, just same thing. Kudos, Supervisor Barrios' statement. I do recall a gentleman of the group making the presentations, and they were with open arms on getting together even before the implementation date, even before the start date. And unfortunately, there's another reason of not having trust. The meeting should have been held before, with a clear understanding of, especially the two supervisors who are very passionate about this issue, to be informed. But it's water underneath the bridge now. We have to go forward and move with the implementation. Hopefully they can spend a couple minutes with us. After all, they're going to make a lot of money. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments from board members? Thank you, Enrique. Please do keep us and the committee informed. And it's kind of hard to establish a program when the state is kind of lagging on the guidelines, and as long as we don't get too far out in front of it and bring costs that we can't cover, I think that's important to watch out for as well.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, may I make one comment? I want to thank the staff at Health and Human Services, because it's been a moving target. Just when we think we have it all down pat, it really isn't that way. The state will come back with additional information, new choices, as they just did, and it makes it very difficult for limited staff to proceed. But thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. That seems to be the case, not just with this effort initiative, but with others as well.
Yes, I know. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Not that I'm aware of. We do have an item in the administration office. We'd like to pull item number 6. There's some more clarity with the resolution. Actually, the resolution we're going to be presenting to you is a little bit different than what's posted, so I wanted to...
I've already pulled it.
Oh, okay. Well.
That's right. Yeah, speaking of that, we'll before we get to the consent agenda, we'll go ahead and I've already got that pulled but we have board announcements. Start with Supervisor Barrios, ladies
Thank you,
first.
Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Yeah, I do have 3 announcements. Supervisor Munzer, our CAO Espinosa, and myself attended the Pinnacles National Park Visitation Symposium that was put together by Congressman Farr. The CAO of Visit California, and she's also the board chair of Brand USA, presented to us ways that we could, as a community, promote ourselves, and especially our Pinnacles National Park. And they talked about promoting, especially during the fall and winter, when visitations were actually kind of low, when we have a lot of opportunity to visit with the condors, to see our beautiful flowers, it's less crowded. So they gave us a lot of really good ideas on how to move forward with that. They talked about a vision, which we have. It really reminded me of our regional park vision because it's about connecting people, connecting resources, partnerships, and so I thought, okay, we can tie those together. We're really going to move forward with this. They talked about signage to connect us regionally, so not just stand alone, but to connect with other counties like Santa Clara, Monterey, Santa Cruz, where they can also help promote us. So it was wonderful. They talked about the biggest asset that we have in San Benito County is the people, and I agree with that. But to promote our food, our culture, and so it was very, very rewarding, and I think we all learned a lot. The second thing is that I attended the Pajaro River Watershed Flood Prevention Authority, which I am a member of. We had what we call a legislative conference. Again, Congressman Farr was there, along with Lieutenant Colonel Baker, the district commander of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers out of San Francisco. We again presented the projects of what we have done regionally to prevent and reduce the risk of flood. But what we have done really is not enough. We do need those levees redone, and there just isn't any money. But we hoped that by having this presentation that we could again state our case. San Benito River provides, or 60% of the water that goes into the Pajaro River comes from the San Benito River, and so we have to be big partners with helping them to support their efforts in trying to upgrade the levees. So once again, we stated the devastation that has happened before to personal property, to the loss of crops that will occur if another flood like 1956 and 1995-98 occurs. So we're hoping that they take all this information back to Washington and that we will get the support that we absolutely need. And it's, you know, again, it's all about the dollars. So, and the last thing is that I was encouraged as the member of the Board of Directors of CSAC to attend the meeting in Sacramento. I had planned to do it by teleconference, but the executive director of CSAC encouraged us to be there because our governor and Senate Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg were going to do a presentation on their 2 bills, SB 105 from the governor and AB 84 from the Senate Democratic Party. And it is all related to the prison population reduction plans. We have a court order, federal court order, to reduce the population in the prisons by the end of this year. So those 2 bills will help us move forward with that. After it was all said and done and everything was presented by the 2 sides, we decided unanimously to support the governor with SB 105. And the reason we did that is because he has come and presented to CSAC many times, has told us with his plan, has asked us to support him, and he has not let us down to date. So we thought that that was a more secure way to go. And the AB 84 actually was kind of risky because they were going to go back to the prison unions to ask for an extension of time. These are the same unions that actually put in the lawsuit, and we are in litigation because of that, where they are complaining about the conditions in the prisons, the likelihood of them extending on something that they have considered a very serious issue is probably not going to happen. So that was risky. It would actually put us back instead of moving us forward. So we thought that the plan that the governor had was really was better planned and would give us additional time, but also it would allow us to plan with all the stakeholders, including the counties, the sheriff's, probation, to move forward with the reduction of prisoners. So anyway, that's my report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I just have one question on the Paro, watershed report is that, yeah, we have to maintain our levees, but also, this probably never will happen, stream bed maintenance as well, both in the upper watershed and the lower watershed. Back in the old days, they used to go in there and clean the channel once in a while, and now we can't get in there from the private sector or the public sector to do the maintenance. That might be a better way to go than just raising levees in the lower watershed. But that should be emphasized to Congressman Farr, that there needs to be some sort of leeway to get in and do in-stream channel maintenance as well. And
Mr. Chair, we have done that, and we have done some of that maintenance. Unfortunately, we can only do it on certain times of the year, and we also have to make sure that we have clearance from the Fish and Game, Department of Fish and Game. Very difficult thing to do. We finally did get clearance in one area up in the Santa Clara County area, and we're able to do that. So those are the kinds of prevention maintenance that we are doing, but a very slow process, as you said.
yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Supervisor Munzer?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo Supervisor Barrios' comments about the symposium that was held at St. Francis Retreat House, that hosted by Congressman Farr. It was a great opportunity. Mayor Velasquez was there from Hollister. Mayor Ledesma was there from Soledad. They actually formed a panel and talked about the marketing issues and the working together to market the Pinnacles. And it was a great forum. I want to thank the San Benito County Business Council. They hosted lunch. Unfortunately, we had to grab our lunch and run. We had another meeting here that we had to attend, but I heard that there was a lot of good ideas exchanged during lunch also. And I would also like to report that the Caltrans sign, and I'm trying to think, north of Sunset on Highway 25 now says the Pinnacle National Park, 32 miles. So the signs are getting changed, and I want to thank Caltrans for their effort in doing that. I also attended a town hall meeting down at Jefferson School, about 45 minutes south of here, past the Pinnacles, and it was actually hosted by Joe Tocado and the San Benito County Water District, and they were talking about water issues. The citizens down there are concerned because Hernandez Reservoir is, for all practical purposes, dry. The river is running dry. Issues were brought up like what you talked about, Mr. Chair, the inability to clean stream beds. And then there were also some concerns about the River Trail Park and the county coming in and fencing people out of the river. And so I addressed those concerns, and it was a well-attended town hall meeting for down there, and I think the people went away with having their concerns alleviated on a lot of the degrees. And that is it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In our intergovernment committee, which Supervisor Barrios couldn't attend because she had more important issues to attend to in the community's best interest, thank you. The city council made it very clear that the city Hollister will not support the county's sales tax in the year 2014. Some of the reasons why is because it's like comparing apples to oranges. San Benito County is trying to do either a 1% countywide sales tax or a 0.5% countywide sales tax, in which the word county incorporates the city and San Juan too. They currently have a 1% sales tax for the city of Hollister, and they sunset on April 2017. it is of the opinion of Mayor Velasquez and Councilmember Scatini that it's in the best interest of the community to let those things sunset and then allow the county to reconsider their position if they wish to go to the public for a sales tax. And sometime either in the 2016 or 2018 when it's a presidential election. So I heard them loud and clear. Right, I understand where they're coming from, and but still, Matt and the rest of the county and the staff and those individuals who are trying to push for it, we still got to go back to the drawing board. But it looks like 2014 might not happen. So we might be looking at 2016. Another item that we did discuss, and unfortunately, again, Supervisor Barrio wasn't there, staff handed us information that I guess airlines in South County used to be called, Pinnacles Highway. And there's actually photos of people taking cutting ribbons out in the neighborhood. And there used to be a bus called Airline Express that goes from LA to San Francisco, and San Bernardino County was one of those roads that they used to express. And just for information for the public and for the board of supervisors. And another note, this Sunday, which is September 15th, Mexico celebrates its Independence Day, and as a gesture, as a cultural, educational event, San Bernardino County residents like to host a parade on the 15th, and they usually go from the high school down San Bernardino Street all the way up to 5th Street to the old Sacred Heart Church. And it usually starts around 11 o'clock in the morning, and it goes up to 12:30, 1 o'clock. It's more of a gesture. It's more of a, educational awareness than anything else, and I always participated in that event. It's welcome for those members of the community and my fellow supervisors. If you wish to participate, please contact me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor De La Cruz. Supervisor Rivas? Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda. I have item 4, 6, and I'm going to pull 12. Would the public like to pull any of the items on the consent? If not, I'll entertain a motion for the amended consent agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second?
All those fair say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. We'll go to item number 4, Supervisor De La Cruz.
Number 4, Ray. I always bring it up every year. It doesn't matter who it is. I always ask that somehow the staff provides us, the top 3 and give reasons of why that one was selected. So I'm asking the same question.
Janelle, you want to go ahead and answer that? Yeah, Janelle Cox is here. She can answer that question for you.
Good morning, Supervisor. Could you repeat your question?
Yes, well, I guess why did you choose this vendor to go and not with the other ones that made presentations?
Oh, Shiver Design. We looked at the qualifications that were submitted by all 3 of the businesses who submitted qualifications to us. They had some very outstanding work that they had completed that was very similar to the type of project that we're undertaking. So they met the qualifications as the most standing candidate for you today.
They met the most qualified.
They had produced the documents that were very similar to what type of marketing and promotional materials that we're looking for your Parks and Recreation. They had done branding, they had done logos, they had done marketing packages for other type of corporations, both nonprofits and government agencies. So it was very similar work that they have produced.
Have you used this vendor in the past?
No, I have not used them, no.
If I could answer, we've used them with AMBAG, COG, the Condor Run, or Bike Ride. I think it was Condor
That was some of the
Bike Ride,
examples, yeah.
a couple of years ago. They do a really outstanding job, and they're familiar with the local, attributes that we have in San Bernardino County, and they're a local business, of course. And I think that we'll be well served with this company that is proposed for this contract.
But I guess again, I don't know, my fellow supervisors like to see it, but I definitely like to see the, who are the three bidders and the pricings and.
Oh, in our
what
reports, sure.
The board as of today, I'm sorry, the staff as of today hasn't even provided that information to the board, so.
Yeah,
this
it
is
was
the
not
pick-
in your
This is the
packet,
pick
that's
for the date for today because you didn't submit that information.
There were 3 submittals that we received, one from an agency in Morgan Hill, the other one from an agency in Salinas. Neither of those produced documents that would give us the information to make the qualifications selection. There wasn't enough documentation in their submittals to validate that they had the abilities to do the project that we were looking for.
All right.
But in the future, we will include that in your reports.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a motion.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to approve agreement.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, we'll move on to item 6, CAO Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this particular item is going to be presented to us by Joe Paul Gonzalez. He's our auditor. And there are some corrections that we wanted to present, and Joe Paul's going to reference that.
Good morning, Chair, Board of Supervisors. In our haste to put this agenda item together, we inadvertently put the wrong resolution in the packet. We have, I have here the correct resolution for your approval today. There are some extra copies in the back for those people who wish to see that resolution. Basically, the change is of language, and the amount that was in that original resolution for contingency, general fund contingency, is different by about $32,000. And as I said, that was a resolution that was put together early on, and this subsequent resolution has been reconciled with all the schedules, the 15 schedules that are required under the County Budget Act that are, before you today.
Okay. Supervisor Barrios, I know you had this circled to pull as well.
That was the main thing, is that the resolution was not tying in with the numbers that were in the actual presentation of the budget.
Yes.
And the date was a little off as well, but this new one addresses, I'm checking my, the errors that I found to see if they have been corrected on the new one, and it appears that they have been. So the only thing I didn't look at this point is the contingency amount, because it's showing, that's been corrected, so.
Yes, that's the amount in the resolution. The contingency for the general fund is $684,370. That's in the board resolution. That's also on Schedule 7, where the contingency is required for disclosure there.
And I may have some others, but when you complete your presentation, I may ask those.
The 15 schedules required in the County Budget Act are attached. An example of Schedule 9, a blank copy of Schedule 9, which is the individual budget units, is there to represent what Schedule 9 looks like. Under Government Code 29090, the county is allowed to go ahead and adopt Schedule 9 by reference, because those were presented to you during the budget hearings. And basically, these schedules here, 1 through 15, represent what was presented to you at the budget hearings, and what the board finally adopted in all its temporary due passes for each budget unit. That's reflected in these schedules here.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Or
I'm checking
comments?
on one more, Mr. Chair, if you could just let me get to that area. Yeah, again, this ties in with the general contingency. That was the same thing, where it stated as 684 down below, but it was 700 and something. So it relates to the same changes that are on the resolution, the new resolution. So they have been addressed. Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
I apologize for the error.
All right, any comments from the public? If not, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for the, I guess, the change of the resolution to approve the resolution that we were given in the handout.
Okay, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we approve and adopt the fiscal year 2013-2014 adopted budget resolution with the adoption of the new resolution presented to us this morning.
Okay.
2013-64 is the resolution number. Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. We'll move on to
Thank you.
number 12, which I pulled. Morning, Mr. Witry. The reason I pulled this is that we're amending the contract for Bracewell, who we have under contract already to take care of some of our other water maintenance, I guess.
Operations, yes.
Exactly. To come up with this figure for $18,228 to kind of manage that well, collect the samples to be tested, do they give an estimate how many hours per year that would take? Because, you know, well maintenance is, I don't think it's a heck of a lot of work to that.
Right. If you look at into page actually 187 of the agenda, I think it's right in there. It kind of breaks it out. I know it's a very thick packet that we have to go through. So on that one page, it kind of breaks out the various tasks that come up to that $18,000. And it's broken out into various things of operation maintenance and adjustments and things of that nature, routine Department of Health correspondence, on-call operator for emergency service, and so forth. So there's a breakdown of what it is. How many hours are within that? The backup is back in my office. I don't have that in the board packet because I thought that would just be too extraneous in the contract itself. But this is the pages and breakdown for how the 18,000 came up with. And one thing I also wanted to point out as well is this is one amendment. We will also have another amendment coming in about 6 months. What we have to do is operate both the well and the surface water treatment simultaneously. And then once we have the well exactly where it should be, we can then ratchet down the expenses that will go along with the surface water treatment plant. Will then lower this contract value. So it is a little bit high right now because we didn't try to morph in one scope versus the other scope. We just said, okay, what does this well as a standalone cost? And then in about 6 months or so, once we know that cost, we can then morph down the costs that are associated with the surface water treatment plant. So that was our thinking with this.
Yeah,
process.
because I really believe it needs to be worked down, and it sometimes when you something that's new, it's kind of estimated pretty high, and to me, looking at this amendment, it's a little bit on the high side from Bracewell. But as long as, you know, what I want to emphasize is hopefully your office kind of keeps a close tab on that. I think that CSA has been hit pretty hard with the well project to begin with. And,
yes.
and Supervisor Munzer.
Steve, is this a not-to-exceed contract or amendment, or is this a flat-out, we're giving them $18,000?
This is all not to exceed based upon their hourly charges. So basically, all the contracts that we have at Bracewell is not to exceed, and then we're billed by the direct times and costs that come associated with it. So it's not, we just write them a check for this, and then we have,
Okay,
you know,
so
a nice
it is
day.
a not-to-exceed.
Yeah, we look at all their bills that come in, and when they submit them on a monthly basis, we go over the bills and make sure it's all appropriate.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, Steve, it's Bracewell. Are they the ones that doing the City Hollister sewage treatment?
No, the City of Hollister has another firm. It's not Bracewell. Bracewell did it in years past when the plant had its issues way back. They have a new service, and now I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. Veolia, that's correct. Thank you, Doug. Veolia is the current contractor running the wastewater plant for the City of Hollister.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? I guess I have one more. And this is an amendment to a current contract we have with all the other services. When does this contract expire?
It was a 5-year term, and we actually first approved it. Let me double check real quick here. I want it, well, looking at, it says 15, June of 15.
Okay.
Basically what we did is we approved this contract to coincide with the improvement or the processes with the 218 boats, which have that 5-year allowable service. So we had this contract be longer than the standard 3-year contract to be that 5-year contract, and expires June of 2015.
Okay, I think it's important that, particularly with this contract, that it goes out to a competitive bid at the expiration of the contract.
Yeah, and it did go through a competitive bid process in June of 2010. Unfortunately, because these systems are very small in nature, we don't get a lot of interest from the Veolias or the American Water that does a lot of stuff in the Monterey Peninsula. As a matter of fact, in 2010, we put it out for bid. We only received one actually firm that bid on the project, which was Bracewell.
Okay, let's keep them honest.
Yes.
Okay, any?
Mr. Chair, so sorry about that. Steve, I don't know, it might be a dumb question, but trying to think about it from an engineer perspective. Who recommended, who designed the system that's being used right now? Was that Bracewell?
Bracewell?
Yeah.
No, actually, it's been a series of different engineers that have done individual plants. For example, Bracewell operates 3 of our systems for us: Dunville, Cielo Vista, as well as Stonegate. The new design for the new well of Stonegate was done by a firm called Schaff and Wheeler, who's done some work for the community before. The original wastewater, the original water treatment plant, I don't recall who it was, but it was put in with part of the development with Stonegate itself. I don't believe Bracewell was the designer for that. The system at Dunville was actually designed by San Benito Engineering as part of the development process over there, so they didn't design that system at Dunville. And to be honest with you, I don't recall who designed the wastewater system at Cielo Vista at this point.
So they don't capture the market.
No, not at all in terms of design aspects, but in terms of operations, they kind of are. That I'm aware of, there are only 2 firms that kind of deal with water systems of this size in our area. There's another gentleman who does some work for the trailer park that's located on what's it? Wright Road, comes across and becomes.
McCloskey.
Thank you, McCloskey. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions, comments from the public? Not, I'll make a motion to approve item 12 with the approval of Amendment 1 to Bracewell Engineering.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, hearing none. Thank you. We'll move on to public hearings. CEO Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is item number 15 on our agenda, and this is going to be presented to us by our interim planning director, Byron Turner. And this is going to be, he's going to be discussing the public hearing with regards to the proposed resolution, adopting a resolution initiating proceedings for the formation of a county service area number 55, that's Creekside 5, and direct the Public Works Department to prepare and file the required engineers' reports and direct staff to negotiate a deposit and reimbursement agreement with the Stone Creek to cover formation and startup cost for the proposed CSA. Byron?
Thank you, members of the board. The Creekside 5 subdivision includes 8 residential lots, the extension of Cypress Street, and a half-acre open space parcel that is to be dedicated to the city of Hollister. The project will connect to the city of Hollister sewer and be provided water by the Sunny Slope Water District. Stone Creek Properties, the owner of the subdivision, requested that a county service area, or CSA, be formed for this project since the subdivision is too small to form a homeowners association. On May 7th, 2013, this request was brought before the board as a regular agenda item, and this board concluded that a formation of a CSA could be initiated, and it made sense in this situation. So pursuant to the California Government Code, a signed resolution from the board is required in order to commence proceedings to establish the CSA. It will then go to LAFCO with the necessary details for approval. So it is therefore recommended that the Board of Supervisors hold a public hearing on the proposed resolution, adopt a resolution initiating proceedings for the formation of CSA number 55 for Creekside 5, direct the Public Works Department to prepare the required and file the required engineer's report, and direct staff to negotiate a deposit and reimbursement agreement with Stone Creek to cover formation and startup costs for the proposed CSA. If the board approves this action, then this will go to the next step. This will go to LAFCO. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from the Board of Supervisors? If not, I'll open up the public hearing for the comments or questions from the public. Anyone would like to address the board? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for comment or a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we adopt resolution number 2013-66, and for the initiating proceedings for the formation of County Service Area Number 55, Creekside 5, direct the Public Works Department to prepare and file the required engineer's report, and to direct staff to negotiate a deposit and reimbursement agreement with Stone Creek to cover formation and startup costs for the proposed CSA.
Second. I have a second from Supervisor Rivas. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is going to be presented to us by Barbara Thompson out of our County Counsel's office, and this is going to be holding a public hearing to consider adoption of a resolution to establish fees for the transaction services provided, adopt a resolution imposing fees to be charged for debit, credit, electronic check transaction services, and approve and authorize the treasurer, tax collector, public administrator to sign an agreement with Elevon to provide credit, debit, ATM transaction services for the county. So we have Barbara here to talk to this. Thank you, Barbara.
Okay, there's three main items that are before the board today. The first one is to hold the public hearing and to impose fees. The proposed resolution sets forth fees for the use of credit cards and e-check transactions and debit cards. The county would only be charging the fees that the third-party vendor actually charges. There's no general revenue that would be obtained from this fee, and the county has no control over the rate. The rate is set by the third-party vendor. It's for the privileger to be allowed to be able to use the credit card, debit cards, or e-checks to be able to pay debts, fees, taxes that are owed to the county. The second matter that's before the board is to approve a contract with Elevon Incorporated using a master state agreement that company has with the state of California, in which local agencies are also allowed to participate by signing on to that contract, which is a standard state contract. It's my understanding from what they've provided that there are several counties that already participate in this agreement. There's also a 30-day termination clause if we ever want to not participate in that agreement. It actually does have slightly lower rates for credit cards rather than some other vendors, probably because it's a master state contract. It has a 2.38% rate for credit card usage as compared to another vendor that we use that has a 3% rate for the credit cards. And the third item is to authorize the treasurer tax collector to sign amendments to the vendors that she uses for processing credit cards and electronic checks on an as-needed basis, since there's amendments that come through periodically, as long as it's approved by county council and it results in no cost to the general fund. So I'd ask that the board hold a public hearing and then consider the resolution that's before the board today.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the board? Supervisor Barrios?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I called Mary Lou last night. She's out of town at a conference,
yes.
But I was concerned about the use of credit cards and debit cards, where it states that credit cards and debit cards are going to be charged 2.38%.
Yes.
But then right below it, it talks about debit cards being charged only 1%. So I'm wondering if we should remove debit cards from the first item on that schedule. I believe it's called Schedule A. And because it makes it confusing. If you use a debit card, you could be charged 2.38 or 1%?
Yes, I'd prefer not to use it because they're through two different vendors, and I'm not sure whether all debit cards can be used through the 1% or whether they're for certain types of debit card transactions, such as for taxes. I don't know whether she gave you any insight with that.
No, she didn't actually.
Yeah,
she was also a little
I have,
perplexed about that.
Yeah, I have a two-page item that was sent by the vendor trying to explain that 1% fee. And I believe that it's possibly for only certain types of transactions that qualify for that 1% fee. So I'm not sure it's for all debit card transactions.
Okay, now
so
that
let's leave it in as far as an option, because also if this 1%, that just recently came into place, because previously it was like a $3.95 flat rate, so they change periodically, so we'll try to process it using the 1%, but if it disappears, then we'll still have the other fee in place to be able to be used if we can't use that 1%. So it's best to have it both in, because they're through two different vendors there.
Oh,
actually.
there are two different vendors,
Yes,
okay.
there's official payments, which processes some of the transactions, and then the Elevon, and official payments is connected with Elevon as well. But
And I
there's actually
question
two
that.
separate companies. Yes,
Yeah, I question
they're
the
both
official
signing on-
payment.
Yeah.
Because I thought official payment would be any payment that would come through would become an official payment, but evidently the official payment is one company and Elevon is the other
Yes.
company.
And official payments is participating in the Elevon state contract, because you see that they're both signing on to the Elevon state contract.
Okay.
But official payments also has its own contract that's separate from the Elevon contract, so there's two different vendors.
All right, and Barbara, I guess the only thing that I want to make absolutely sure is when somebody is paying with a debit card or a credit card, that it is very clear what their charge is going to be, that they're not going to be under the impression that it's going to be 1%, and they're actually going to be paying almost 1.5 times more.
Okay, I can verify that it should be clear when they're signing when they're authorizing.
When they're
what it is.
authorized, okay.
I haven't seen the screen that they would check to approve it, but it should be clear, otherwise the people wouldn't be able to authorize it. They have to have an approval through the vendor as well when they're doing the credit card transaction. So they have to have that authorization when they do the credit card or the debit card, as well as these fee structures. And I should also mention that it would have to come back to the board if the fees increase at any point in the future. So we would bringing it back to the board if those do increase.
All right, very good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz.
Yes, thank you. Barbara, in the private business, maybe in the government business it works a little different, but in the private business, credit card companies not only jack you up for the charges, for the transactions, but they also charge you $5 to send them a statement, $20 to just allow them to use their machines, and on add-ons. This is not being applied. We're not being charged any of that stuff, because I do see that there's also another contract somewhere else that is not included in the transmittal. So there's
Right.
no hidden cost that's going to come down the road, right?
Well, this is just to be able to use the credit card
I understand that.
for the vendor.
I understand
It
that.
doesn't address any charges that the actual credit card itself, like if you had Visa, for example. Let's say that you were, I don't know, whatever charges that individual might have on the credit card would be separate and apart from, these are all the charges that I'm aware of for the vendor that would actually be charged for processing.
So the
credit card.
vendor is not going to charge us anything?
No, the vendor's not charging
Right,
us
so-
anything.
So we're getting a free statement from the vendor of all the charges that were applied that given month.
Right, I believe that they're doing everything free, and they're collecting all their costs through these charges
I
on the
just want to make sure
individuals.
that's happening.
Yeah, there's supposed to be no cost to the general fund.
Okay. As long as we talked about it here today.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions from the board? If not, then I'll open up the public hearing. Anybody from the public? I see Mr. Richmond.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman. Marty Richmond from Hollister. I just want to keep the public informed. Most people realize that if you walk in and you don't have enough credit left on your credit card, you're not going to be able to pay the bill if it's a big bill. But a lot of people do not realize that many institutions, even the largest institutions, have limits on electronic checks. And so I tried to pay a bill with electronic check a few weeks ago, and it said wouldn't take it. And so I paid it another way, and when I called the institution, they said, well, we only take $1,000, and that's our limit on electronic checks per day for one account. And it was a large institution, and you know, I'm sure it's in the fine print somewhere. I just never bothered to see it. So if you want to avoid your the penalty for failing to pay your taxes, property taxes or such, my advice is don't wait for the last minute and go in on the last day and think you're going to for sure get an electronic check approved because the system is available. And I understand You may not have enough money, and that's why you wait till the last day. But you may make sure, just the public should make sure that they know that even if you have money in your account to cover it, many, because of fraud probabilities, many places anymore are putting limits on electronic checks. So be careful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for further comments or questions. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adopt resolution 2013-67, imposing fees to be charged for debit, credit, electronic checks, and transaction services, and approve and authorize the treasurer, tax collector, public administrator to sign the agreement with Avalon to approve credit, debit, ATM transaction services to the county, as well as to approve and execute future amendments to contracts for payment transaction services with the approval of the county council, and that has no cost to the county.
Second.
All those fair say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Move on to the regular agenda, and we have an item from the San Bernardino County Arts Council, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, a representative from the San Bernardino Arts Council will be presenting to us, or going to be requesting approval of the San Bernardino County Arts Council to serve as San Bernardino County as a state and local partner in the California Arts Council. So we have the representatives here.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Lane from the San Benito County Arts Council, and I want to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to speak today. Every year we ask the County Board of Supervisors to pass a resolution designating our organization as the state and local partner of the California Arts Council. Not only does this make us eligible for various avenues of arts funding from the state level, but it also establishes and supports an important partnership between our Arts Council here in San Benito County and our counterpart at the state level. This year we thought we would take a few minutes just to let you know what we're doing and how we are promoting the arts in San Benito County. So our motto here, you can see, is bringing people together through the arts. So our mission is to promote diversity in the arts, quality, and involvement. We encourage artistic and cultural growth for artists and residents. We provide access to the arts through free and accessible public programs. And we also work together to establish a favorable climate for the arts to thrive. And this happens primarily through arts advocacy. In this graph here, you can see how we are funded. So one of our biggest funders is, in fact, the California Arts Council. We also receive funds from our local community foundation and then have other sources of earned income, other small grants, and corporate and private sponsorships. We have a number of programs that we run through our Arts Council, and I'll talk about those. The first thing that happened about a year ago is we worked out a partnership with the Black Sage Gallery in downtown Hollister. So we're running a gallery. In that space, we've been doing rotating art exhibitions, First Fridays. We started a new pre-K program where we bring very young children into the gallery to talk about artwork and do projects together. And we're also offering seminars and workshops for artists and helping build some technical assistance there. One of our largest programs is an Artists in the Schools program that serves over 6,000 students in elementary and middle schools throughout 17 schools in San Benito County. A lot of people don't even know that there are 17 schools in San Benito County, and we are serving a large majority of them, including some of the most rural schools out in Jefferson, Pinoche, in that area. And then, of course, we have our new pre-K program, which in this last year served 200 students at 6 preschools. Here's an image here of a kindergartner from Sierra Vista School, and you can see she's learning taiko drumming with the internationally renowned San Jose Taiko Group. We also do an annual Open Studios art tour, wherein artists throughout San Benito County open their homes and studios to the public for a weekend to show how art is made, the materials that are used, and to showcase and sell their artwork. And we have a really great group of artists that we work together year to year, and every year we try to bring in new artists as well. And this program is free and open to the public. We also do regranting in the arts through mini grants. So we support a number of other local arts organizations to help them with production costs or marketing and things like that. Here's just a list that you can review in your own time. I won't take up the time here of some of the visual artists, performing artists, and art venues in San Benito County. And you might be surprised actually how much is going on right here in our community. So there's many ways to get involved as artists, volunteers, parents through the schools, and donors. And I want just to say that we would really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you individually sometime within the next 6 months to a year to see how we can better serve the arts in San Benito County and specifically meet the needs of the constituents in your district. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Supervisor Barrios?
Just a comment, Jennifer, this is wonderful work that you do, and probably to me, one of your greatest achievements for this council is what you do at the schools. Because you reach, diversity, you reach all children, they all have an opportunity to learn, enjoy, and grow. So I think that is a wonderful thing that you do, so I really appreciate that. And we talked about that being one of the assets of San Benito County when I attended, along with the others, the symposium from Congressman Farr. And we do have that to offer. We have the culture and the art that is very valuable. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer, I just want to echo that. I just appreciate the efforts of the council reaching out to the school kids in the rural schools. Most of those rural schools, small rural schools, are in my district. I know they're a long ways off and they're very small, but I appreciate you guys going out there, assisting the teachers out there, and bringing the arts to the kids. And I've heard many good things about it over the years.
Great. And if I could just say one thing, actually, one of our projects with the rural schools, in my mind, is one of our most exciting projects. We've been working with Pinnacles Partnership and with the eCube Foundation to do an environmental art residency at their science camp at the Pinnacles National Park. So we're working together, we're bringing science and art together, and the kids are using found objects in nature to create sculptures, and so it's a really nice partnership that we have working across sectors.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Speaking as somebody who can't sing, I can't dance, I can't draw, having zero talent at all with in the arts, I still appreciate it deeply and admire those that do have talent. And I appreciate the fact that you're connecting with in my district, the Aromas Artisans. It's quite a community that is tries to connect with the public, and there's a great deal of art in Aromas and San Juan Bautista, and I think that's kind of the future for a small town like San Juan, to have the arts being displayed and the talent that is throughout our entire county. In San Juan, I think that's how we compete with our downtown stores, bring people in to see what's there and visit, eat at our restaurants, because there is, tremendous art in our community, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and a lot of it's just done by volunteers and private monies, and I wish there was a way we could support it even further, but I appreciate your work.
Thank you.
With that, I'll open it up to public comment. If not, we have an action. Oh, I'm sorry. Come to the podium, please, and state your name and where you live.
My name is Kent Child. I'm the Vice President of the Council currently. I'm making a comment directly with your comments, Anthony. There is really no art unless we have an audience. That's the most critical thing. The best definition, I spent my career teaching art at Gavilan College, most of you know that. The best definition I've ever encountered about art is quality of communication. Now, we represent generally the folks that start that cycle of communication, but without all of us, all the constituency in our community, including supervisors, attending our events and so forth, then the music is heard, the play is seen, the sculpture or the painting is viewed. So we all are partners in this endeavor, and thank you for the opportunity to serve us all.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? If not, we'll bring it back to the board for adoption of a resolution.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt resolution approving the San Bernardino Arts the Council to serve San Bernardino County as a state and local partner of the California Arts Council. I believe it's resolution number 2013-68.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We'll move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this particular item is item number 18 on our agenda, and this will be presented to us by our Ag Commissioner, Ron Ross, and he'll be presenting to us the Ag Report for 2012.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As you see, it's being passed out now. Our office has completed the 2012 crop report for San Bernardino County. This is an annual report. We do this each year. We prepared this report, which gives the gross value of the county's agriculture. This particular report is used by several industries, individuals, and so forth. It's often used by bankers, educators, researchers, agricultural support businesses, and others to determine the trends and view the economic health of the region's agriculture. In 2012, we had a banner year. The total crop income was $297 million, which is a 13% increase from the previous year. Actually, this is a record year for production in San Bernardino County, breaking the past record in 2007 of $293 million. The biggest gain was probably in vegetable crops. Mainly in the planting and the price for romaine lettuce, spinach, salad mix, and specialty vegetable crops. Vegetable crops amount to about 70% of the gross value here in the county. Also, the weather cooperated this year for tree fruits, and which resulted in higher yields for apples, apricots, cherries, walnuts, and grapes. While the amount of cattle that was sold went down because of drought conditions, the prices remained high. For this year, what we did as our crop report is we put some additional information regarding the cattle industry. We now will list the actual numbers of cattle on hand for the year. What we found was recently some researchers had mistakenly been using the cattle sale numbers from the crop report to determine the county's herd size. The numbers of cattle that are listed in the crop report is not a countywide survey, but the portion of the permanent herd that is sold each year. So there's a lot of factors that go into how much is actually sold and how much is retained, but the number of cattle that producers decide each year can vary due to market conditions, rainfall, hay prices, and many other factors. So that's something new in our crop report this year, and we'll have it in there and years to come, so that persons, researchers, or the industry can track the actual cattle numbers on hand. Basically, what the
1 second,
yes.
Mr. Ross, Supervisor Windsor.
Yes.
Ron, can I interrupt you and ask a question? Because, as you mentioned, the cattle has become such a hot topic here, especially for District 4. So on your page 11 of your report, you have all cattle, and you have production. You have, for 2012, it's 46,000 change. 2011, you have almost 36,000. Now, is that the animals on the hills, or is that animals that have been sold at auction?
Yeah, these are animals that have been sold.
These are animals.
That's correct.
So this report has nothing to do with the amount of cattle on the hills.
That's correct. Those are the
Okay.
number of cattle that have been sold. At the bottom of page 11 is what the actual inventory is.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I see. Now and those kind of numbers have not been in your reports before.
No, this is the first year we've done it.
Yeah, and that's
This never
why.
came up before where someone wanted cattle numbers, and actually there was, recently, as we all know, there was some errors in taking a look at the crop report. Cattle's the only exception. And when we talk about row crop and so forth, those are annual crops. Tree fruit gets harvested annually, but with cattle, there's always some that are retained to build herd size. If cattle prices are increasing, what will happen is the producers will retain some animals to build up the herd size so that next year they can, produce more cattle, take advantage of market conditions. So those things always change. So that, like I said, the cattle herd inventory is something new this year, and we will continue to do that each year.
And I just want to say I appreciate the clarity of these numbers, because as we all know, the previous reports have gotten misconstrued, and it's costing us money, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's something that hadn't come up before, but the information is now available.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, yeah, I want to thank the ranchers for stepping up and trying to control greenhouse gases by lowering our herds right now, ahead of our general plan revision. So, okay.
Okay.
We'll move on.
Okay. Just a little information as far as what how much money, what that really means to the not only the county but the region to the state. And we have over $250 million, or $250 million that's produced in our county's open spaces. So not only does that mean that it's income for the producers in this area, but it also contributes to the nation's or to the region's economy from a variety of local inputs that are needed to sustain the crops each year. What I'm getting at is, for example, the crops each year require fertilizer, diesels for tractor, drip tape for irrigation, plus all the repairs and maintenance that have to happen either with the permanent structures on the property or with harvesting equipment. And so this effect on the local economy is called a ripple or multiplier effect. And a couple of years ago, Monterey County did commission a couple economists to determine what this multiplier effect is for agriculture. And they determined that the region's agriculture had a multiplier effect of 1.6. So what that means is for every dollar in production revenue, that generates an additional 60% in the region's economy for various related services that ag provides. So when you add that multiplier effect in with the production, we're talking about almost $500 million, about $475 million was contributed to the state's economy just from the crops grown here in San Benito County. So one of the things to consider is that that this multiplier effect is renewable. Each year, the process is started over and over again. So this is something that continually gets pumped back to the local economy. While the variety of crops and type of crops change all the time, tree crops, row crops, one time this is all hay and so forth, that changes over the time. But as long as regulations such as regulatory burdens, water supply, and the local business climate remains favorable to agriculture, agriculture should remain an important player in the county.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Supervisor Barrios?
Just that this is encouraging, really encouraging that we had a record year, and we had, I guess the best year was 2007, and it almost sounds like we should be having a lettuce festival in San Benito County.
Yeah, things are changing. 30, 40 years ago, it was primarily tree crops, and now it's gone a lot to row crops.
Yeah,
one of the things that's probably going to happen in the future, I mean, there's been an increase in wine, not production yet because those orchards or those vineyards are still in not production, but we're going to see a slight increase in, or, not a slight, but pretty good increase in our wine grape industry.
Yeah. And I see that it's already showing as an increase from last year, so.
It's starting to inch up, but there's fairly new plantings that aren't in production yet. Another thing, we don't really know what the next gimmick, or not gimmick, but the next, I'm not going to say fad, but I mean, there are different things that happen where consumers' taste change, due to the health concerns and so forth, and it seems to be that now there seems to be an increase in interest in berries, such as raspberries and blueberries and stuff like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's all of a sudden a major player here in a few years.
Yeah. And I see that the walnuts were on too. Enjoyed a wonderful increase. I thought that our walnut production was actually going down, but it went up significantly.
Yeah, it had to do with the weather. I mean, last year the weather conditions were favorable, and also the price of walnuts has gone up. Price of walnuts has been pretty good the last few years.
Okay.
A lot of it has to do with kind of what I talked about before was, consumer taste and so forth. There's been some recognition that walnuts have some health effects.
Right.
The oil that's in the walnuts is healthy for heart and so forth. And so that's increased the consumption of walnuts, especially overseas. This area produces a lot of walnuts that are exported.
Yeah, that's what I understand. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
All
Chair.
right. Any other comments? Any comments from the public on the ag crop report? If not, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion to accept the report and authorize the release of the report to the public.
So moved.
Second.
All those fair say aye.
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 Opposed, hearing none, we'll move on to the assessor sale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have another report that we're going to present to you. This is going to be coming out of our assessor's office. This is going to be presented to you by Tom Slavich, and this will be the assessor's 2013 and 2014 annual report. Tom?
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Today I'm going to talk to you about the 2013 annual report of the assessor's office. You have this in your packet, and there's also the report in the back for the general public. The report contains information about assessed values in San Benito County, talks about the history of assessed values, breaks it down by different property types, also by school districts as well. And after 5 years of negative tax growth and assessed values, I'm pleased to report that we have our first year increase since 2007. The prior 5 years, we had a decrease of negative 19%. This year, we experienced an increase of over $346 million in assessed value, which resulted in an increase of 6.3% from the prior year. Coincidentally, this is the same increase we experienced in 2007. Our total assessed value is over $6.1 billion for this year. Now, of the four categories of properties, residential properties went up the most in total assessed value at 6.7%, followed by ag properties, which were 6.2%. Commercial properties went up slightly, up about 1%, and industrial properties were actually negative 1%. Now, all the school districts, you'll see that in your report, they all increased in total assessed value from 3% all the way up to 9% in value. Now, one of the major factors for the increases was Prop 8 valuations. Those are the properties that we look at every year. For the last 5 years, we've been reducing values. Over 7,000 properties been looked at and reduced. Proposition 8 basically lets us look at the Prop 13 value compared to the current market value. So if the current market value actually drops below the Prop 13 value, we can roll the current market value. And that's what we've been doing from 2008 to 2012.
While we're right there, I looked at that when I was reading the report, pretty close as far as how you make those calculations and using that Prop 8 deal. Are we halfway through the increase, taking the higher, where are we at overall on the that Prop 8 adjustment?
Well, like I mentioned, for the last 5 years, we reduced 7,200 properties. That's about 38% of all the secured parcels in the county receive some type of property reduction. This year, 1,700 of those properties were fully restored back to their Prop 13 values. The remaining 5,500 properties were also increased as well due to the rising real estate market. So, you know, out from 37%, now we've got about 28% left on Prop 8 status, but some of those values have adjusted upward, but not all the way up to their Prop 13 values.
Okay, so we'll probably see that will play a role in next year's valuations as well, as far as driving the valuations up.
These values are all based on January 1st, and the market has increased since then. So if the market continues
next year's values, we'll see some more increases, and some more properties probably will come out of Prop 8 status, back to their Prop 13 values.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? If not, you continue to report.
Okay. So out of the 58 counties, there were 6 counties that had negative tax rolls. That's about 10% of all the counties in California. Last year, we had 27 counties that had increases in assessed values. We had a decrease last year of negative 1.7%. This year, there's going to be 52 counties that had increases in assessed values, so a tremendous change from last year. Among the 12 Bay Area counties, Santa Clara County increased the most at 8.3%, followed by Solano County at 7.7%. The county with the biggest percentage decline in the state was Inyo County at 4.7%, and the largest increase in the state was Santa Clara County, 8.3%. So our neighboring counties, how do they do? Both Monterey and Santa Cruz were at 3.7%. Merced was at 6.5%. And as I mentioned, Santa Clara County 8.3%, and we fared out at 6.3%, so not too bad. Now, due to budget cuts last year, we lost a third of our staff, and I just want to thank my office for doing an outstanding job this year. I commend them for their hard work and dedication. Even though the tax roll is closed, we're still working on our 2013 assessments and also our backlogs. So for next year, we'll continue to monitor all the relevant market data and determine if further value adjustments are needed for 2014. And at this time, I'd like to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Supervisor Barrios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to comment, Tom, this is great. Another encouraging report that it looks like we're on the upswing for the economy, and that is wonderful for our county. So thank you, and thank you, your staff. And Ron, I didn't thank your staff, but I think you both did a wonderful job in presenting to us the state of the county at this time. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you. Tom, you think we will ever get to the 2007-2008 year?
That's when we had about $6.8 billion in value, I think, roughly in total. Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get there?
We'll get there. If the market continues, we'll get there.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Rivas? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm referring to page 7. There's a breakdown in the taxable values by type of property, and you see obviously an increase in 3 categories, which are the commercial, the parcel count, agricultural, and residential, but looks like we went down a bit in industrial. So what is, if you can interpret that for me and for some local residents out there, so how can we reverse that trend?
Well, the industrial properties, as I mentioned, went down about -1%, and that market really hasn't recovered as of yet. The other categories are starting to come back. Commercial is slowly coming back, but industrial properties, there's just a lot of properties out there that are just vacant and they're not selling.
So it's really just a matter of time, hopefully.
Just a matter of time on those.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Thank you. I know I read the same page real closely, and one of the what we need to make note of as a board and as a county is that the agricultural value is higher than pre-recession, and I know those ag values are still driving upwards even since this report was generated, and so that leads me to quite a good optimism about the agricultural sector of our local economy.
Yeah, the ag values, even during the times when things were declining, that residential was declining, they were still the strongest. They were declining very little, so.
Okay. With that, I'll open it up for public comment.
Marty Richmond again from Hollister. I actually keep a copy of all the PDFs of the assessor's reports on my computer so I can keep an eye on what's going on. And I always appreciate these reports because they're really well done. And the comparisons and go back a number of years, so it makes it a lot easier for you to see what's happening. But I just want to remind the board, based on some of the comments I just heard, that a few things. Number one is the top of the bubble, whenever that was, 2007 or 2006, is not a normal place where we would be if there was no bubble. That's the first comment. And although I'm glad the property values are coming back, $6 billion today is not going to buy what $6 billion bought 5 years ago. I assure you of that. So if it hits that magic number, we have not woken up rich. We woke up on third base and we got there, but when you look around and see how far that same amount of property tax money is going to go, you're going to find that it won't go nearly as far as it went 5 years before. So I'm glad we're going to come back, and inflation alone, even if nothing else happened, should push us toward a higher number. That doesn't mean we're any better off financially. In fact, our problem is that because we are a very small county, we don't have that pillow of reserves that a lot of places have to absorb the up and downs that happen through natural progression. You get the bubbles and you get the cave-ins and so on and so forth. And just like our unemployment, if you look at the unemployment in the state of California as a whole, you see little wiggles in the line. If you look at the unemployment rate in San Benito County, where it's very seasonal, you see these huge shark teeth, these huge swings. So we have essentially a built-in problem, innate in the way our county is structured, the size of the county, which we can't go out, snap our fingers and double the population, can't be done. And I wouldn't want to do it if we could do it. My point is that we get to those numbers, we're not out of the woods because we've got an enormous amount of debt that we have to get rid of, that we've committed to the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else on public? If not, I'll close the public comment period. And yeah, I agree with that. We're not out of the woods, and I think this board and future boards always have to keep that in mind, and always have kept it in mind that we have limited resources for the services that we're obligated to provide. And even in the best of times, we have limited resources. We're always in the woods, and we'll never get out of the woods because that's where we are. And it's encouraging that we're not seeing the reductions in values now, and I really expect that to continue to go forward. But we also have to live within our means and understand our costs, as well as what is conservative revenue estimates when we make our budget. Tom, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that this main increase was due to these adjustments in value from these properties that we lowered. But you're going to be seeing a lot of developments, I think, coming up. If the market continues for the next year, that's going to go over above this. So next year, I think it'll probably be just as good as this year, or probably even better as far as increased in assessed growth.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the assessor's 2013-14 annual report.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. We'll move on to item 20, and I probably would take that one since I put it on the agenda myself. Basically, we had a special meeting 2 weeks ago to discuss the new community study areas, and the board took a direction I particularly did not support, still don't support it. I think the community study areas, identifying those areas is not conducive to good planning, nor getting the most out of a project or a development that we have. It's unfair to other areas of the county that might be able to submit a project, but have to go through other processes. I believe in our process for the general plan, amendments in the unincorporated areas. 3 of the study areas out of the 4 border or are in my district that will have a profound effect within my district, and it's a head scratcher for me. It really is in keeping that in our general plan. It's an entitlement. I repeat, it's an entitlement to be having these study areas. I, as a landowner, wish I was in a circle, but I'm not, and that's fine. But the thing about it is, I think it subjects this county to undue risk to be challenged with our general plan and the overall investment that we've made, and we're kind of on a shoestring with it, and it's really based on the influence of one person, and it just has been distressful to me the whole time. I have one study area that has no water. We kept it in, and it has no water. The property owner knows it. We know it, and how we could justify that, maybe the narrative will. Another study area along the balsa is an area that we should not, as a county, develop within the horizon of this general plan. It is a social, environmental, and economic disaster if we move forward with that. And it's just mind-boggling. And the one study area that's out on Fairview Road, if it was adjacent to the current area that's we approved for development, that would make sense, but it's not. It's just out there, and I don't quite understand why we would support something like that. But I felt that in order to continue to move the general plan revision process forward and maintain, the spirit of the motion and direction that this board decided to take a couple weeks ago, and is to create a committee of supervisors to develop those narratives with staff and appropriate input to keep this process moving along, and I have confidence that it will be well done. And my idea is to appoint Supervisor Barrios, who's very, very articulate with her language skills, and I appreciate that, and it was her motion to do this. And the idea of the narratives, and I think Supervisor Rivas had some good ideas what that should consist of, and have him work on, with Supervisor Barrios on this ad hoc committee, and to bring back to the board, what really is the focus of these study areas. And I think that's an important component of the direction we decided to go in on that Tuesday. Supervisor Barrios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With all due respect, I am honored that you would appoint me to such an ad hoc committee, but I really feel that at the meeting that we had earlier this month, that we really did give clear direction to staff on where we want to go with this. I believe that adding another committee would actually add more cost and more time to the plan. Unless staff is asking for our help, which I don't believe they did, we thought that the direction was very clear. I really don't think that this is necessary. I think it's just more bureaucracy, and more time will be taken to do this. And I thought we gave pretty clear direction, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard that we didn't. So, but again, thank you for considering me for the ad hoc committee, but I don't believe that it's necessary at this time.
Okay. I respect that. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recall from the last conversation, and I just felt that Supervisor Rivas hit it on dot with his message, with his ideas, and some of those ideas, to refresh our thinking, was to make it as simple as general, allowed Byron to come back and provide those general terms. I know the word transportation was involved, and I just feel that it needs to go in that direction. Let it go to the staff level. Supervisor Rivas had good points, and I will continue even today to support Supervisor Rivas' position to go in that direction and not create a subcommittee, Mr. Chair.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I appreciate that. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I as well appreciate the idea of an ad hoc a committee, but at the same time, I think I have to ask, you know, obviously when you're working in a form of a committee, it's all in the way of being very transparent. And I think in our motion, we directed that any narrative come back to the board for our final approval. And I think that, you know, I'm not opposed to the idea of establishing such an ad hoc group, but I think if I can pose a question to our planning staff is, you know, is this going to add additional cost? It sounds like it certainly will add additional time, because although, sure, it was my idea, I'm certainly not a planning expert. I want to throw that to the professionals. That's why I think in the motion we had recommended that Byron and staff will work with a consultant, because they're the professionals. They could get this done, and then in the end, it all comes back to the board anyway. So will there be, you know, if we were to move with establishing this ad hoc group and get board members involved, is it going to add additional cost? In your opinion, will it add additional time? Because I'm not sure, you know, I think the rest of the board, we want to get this stuff over with and done. Mm-hmm. So what are your feelings?
Well, the direction of the board, I felt, was pretty clear that we were to work with a new consultant to establish the narrative and then bring those narratives back to the board. And so any change has the potential for complicating the process. I couldn't speak to cost, though.
Okay.
Okay, and really, my intentions and the reason for, you know, the idea of developing a supervisory committee is because this thing has gotten completely out of control, and I really don't have anyone to blame but maybe this board. Yeah. And this was supposed to have been done, completed, and said, and sealed, and delivered by the end of 2012. Mm-hmm. And by having this delay and maybe letting the consultant run a little bit further along than what we probably should have, has added the cost. And my intentions is not, you know, just be kind of date certain and moving along, and that was what the role of developing these narratives would, you know, and getting past that stage. And no offense to our staff or consultant that we have yet to hire, I guess, we need to get this done, and that's why, you know, maybe a little bit more expectations from, you know, when board members are involved is to get the job done in a timely fashion, because sometimes when we are involved in issues, it does help move people along. But, you know, and that's what I'm after. I don't, you know, like I said, I don't agree with the whole thing, but I'm trying to find a way that we, you know, minimize the costs, that the reports and narratives do reflect what, you know, we have in mind as far as the future of the within these areas. Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I saw this on the agenda, I thought it was a good idea, because we have directed staff to create narratives for these study community areas, but we haven't really told them what we want in those narratives. So they're going to have to, either staff or the consultant is going to have to guess at what we're thinking. Whereas if we had a subcommittee that comes up with the basics of what we want to see in a narrative, and granted, none of us are planning experts, but we can at least get what we want to see in there on paper and give them something to work with. And doing this while we're hiring the consultant, we can get that move that much quicker and get it going forward. So personally, I support the idea of this subcommittee to kind of come up with the ideas of what we want to have in this narrative and how we want these new community study areas defined.
Yeah, Supervisor Barrios?
Mr. Chair, we already have those, that wording is really already there. It just needs to be included. So we're not going to be creating any new narratives. The narratives are already been included in some of the information that has come back to us. It really is just picking it out, putting it in the policy. And it was very clear to me that we had the narratives already. Just needed to be included.
And Mr.
Supervisor Rivas?
And, yeah, I think, you know, I had specifically said that the narratives need to be vague, but the content of the narrative, of these narratives, I was very specific on what needs to be addressed and what I was looking for. And obviously it was, the first thing was a description of the conditions of the area, of these study areas. You know, and you know, when I talk about the conditions, about the acreage, maybe some historical information about that area, and some background information that explains why they are a study area. All that, I'm sure staff already has that information. And then the other thing I talked about, which I thought was important, was to get some information related to city-county coordination among these study areas, as far as the provision of our services out there and what that's going to look like. If we talk about maybe special districts, or if, you know, what role will the county and city play together in future annexation for some of the study areas that are closer to the city? I mean, who knows? That's what I was looking for, and I specifically went in detail about what I was looking for. And if we could maybe have a video of our previous meeting, and we could, you know, get, you know, I hate to go through this again, but I think that it was pretty clear. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if we have it, I sure don't, and maybe I got to reread it again or something, because I don't see a very good description of each of the study areas and what we anticipate that what's, you know, what we're doing in each of them, and what Supervisor Rivas was describing is what I'm kind of, maybe, you know, I would change my position if I had that more detailed information.
Well, yeah, well, that's what I was asking for was, we don't have that detail now, but staff, I'm sure, has the resources to provide us with that detail. And that's what I was alluding to in the previous meeting, was this was the structure behind the narratives that I was looking for. And, and I believe, in a conversation I had with Byron, you know, in introducing my idea to him prior to the last meeting, that staff has most of this information. It's just a matter of getting it together.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you. Why don't we just hold off on this idea, let the staff come back, as requested by the prior board, and it's satisfactory to at least a majority of the board. Let's just move on, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I would support that position.
All right, and one of the things I did put in this item is, you know, I want this to come back. I want this process to keep moving forward. I want to see an end to this general plan project. And when do you think you could come back to the board with this description, Byron?
Well, the RFP that has been sent out to potential consultants gives them a window through September to develop their proposal and come back to staff. So in October, I'll be giving you an update on the status of hiring a consultant, and at that time, I can also discuss the item.
So it wouldn't be, with the new consultant who doesn't know the history or knows the areas themselves, how would they develop the narrative if they're kind of stepping into it?
The narratives are probably going to be driven by staff knowledge more than the consultant.
With our staff, yeah, and that's exactly the answer of the question I just asked that I expected, because it really is not be driven by the consultant, it's be driven by our staff, and that's one of the reasons I thought an ad hoc committee could assist our staff to get the answers and make sure that the components of what we are looking for, that the narrative should have. But if I don't have support for even an ad hoc committee, I won't worry about it, and, what the heck? But I just wanted to put one more crack into these study areas, and that's the beauty of being a chairman. Byron, just bring it back as quick as you can. We'll move on. Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment. I apologize. See, I like putting myself out on a limb, and I'll saw it off standing on
I'll
the
saw
wrong
it off
side
for
of
you,
it.
sir. Thank you again, Marvin Jones. Got mixed emotions about this. These service areas, I got the impression that if we get them in our general plan, it's all well and good. Might improve the process of economic development if someone wants to come in and dare do some improvements in the county. If you're outside of the service area, you can bet your bottom dollar that some environmental organization will sue you if you're outside of this service area. And so a developer or an entity that wants to do some improvements will have to bear that cost and the time. If you do this service area, I mean, this is California, and there will be a lawsuit. Is the county going to get to pay for that? I'm a taxpayer. That would come out of my pocket. I want it to come out of the developer's pocket. I don't want it to come out of my pocket. That's just a thought. I'm not sure. I may be off in left field again. I've been there many times, out on a limb, as you say. So if you have these service areas, is some environmental organization going to come sue you? And that'd be a county expense, not a developer's expense. Just a thought. And it is kind of inequitable. Some folks get supported by the county. Some have to pay the lawsuit themselves. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from public? If not, yeah, that's my sentiments. I'm not anti-growth, or I'm actually pro-growth, pro-smart growth, and I've been doing this long enough. I'll call myself experienced in planning. I served on a planning commission, and we're going in the wrong direction on this one, and I know I'm right, but that's okay. We'll go on to the next item, which is our discussion on the Farm Labor Association and Homeless Coalition contract. CEO, would you like Supervisor Rivas?
Yes, I'm going to step aside from this discussion because I am a member of the Homeless Coalition, and I felt that since we're going to be discussing some a contract between the Homeless Coalition and the county and the Farm Labor Association, that's best I not participate.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Rivas. CEO Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, over the last month or so, the ad hoc committee made of Jerry Munzer, Supervisor Munzer, and Supervisor De La Cruz, and I have met with the Homeless Coalition and the Farm Labor Association reviewing the contracts. And today, we are bringing back to your board the findings to the board, and wanted to go ahead and, I guess, allow Supervisor Jerry Munzer and Supervisor De La Cruz to discuss some of the meetings that we've had.
Okay, which supervisor would like to go first?
I guess I'll go first, and then I'll let Supervisor Munzer fill in all the technical blanks. I really did not know the magnitude of the relationship that existed out there. I really want to give kudos to Supervisor Munzer, Ray, and both organizations, the Farm Labor Association and the Homeless Coalition, for having all these meetings to try to come up with a resolution. Unfortunately, we don't have one right now. However, in the last couple of minutes or a couple hours, some type of cooperation is occurring, is moving. But at first, Mr. Chair, there was just it was a far different from one side to the other. We're talking about the use of the kitchen, we're talking about the rental, we're talking about the fees, we're talking about the deposits, we're talking about the length. It was just all different opinions and questions, even on dollar values. But we felt, Jerry and I felt, that it was in the best interest of the community to try to continue to work together, even though we knew it appeared that we couldn't get anything. So finally, we had a meeting about a couple weeks ago, and I just raised my hands up and I said, "It's enough is enough. Let's go home. There's no more need to meet." So then Jerry and I we kind of talked to Jerry last week, and I said, "You know, Jerry, it's a shame on us and you and I if we don't give it one more try." So I called the Homeless Coalition, and Jerry called the Farm Labor Association, and kind of this talk started happening again. I would encourage, Mr. Chair, that I haven't seen both sides of the contract, what's out there. I encourage that we do listen to some of the members of the public, and then allow this committee, Jerry and I, to go back and give it one more time, and then we'll report back to the board.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor De La Cruz. Supervisor Munzer?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I think we all know that the labor camp has been around since the 50s. The Farm Labor Association / Farm Bureau has managed it for us, and they have done a very good job of doing that. A few years ago, and I'm not sure exactly when, 5 or 6 years ago, we received a state grant of $3+ million to rebuild the camp and rebuild the kitchen facility. And again, the Farm Labor Association has done a good job overseeing the rebuilding of the camp and utilizing the buildings out there, and I appreciate them. Again, six or 7 years ago, they entered into an agreement with the Homeless Coalition to sublet the buildings out there in the wintertime when the demand for the farm labor was at its lowest. And they have worked very well over the years until the last year or so. And then some issues have cropped up. As we heard from our Ag Commissioner, you know, Ag is changing in this county. The need for workers, which historically had only been through the summer harvest seasons, that is changing. And that has to be addressed in these contracts and in these negotiations. As Supervisor De La Cruz said, a week or two ago when we last met with both groups, I was pretty much, okay, we're done, we're not getting anywhere. You know, this whole board was going to have to make a decision, and the two agencies were going to have to live with it. Since then, through talks, ongoing talks, I feel we have moved closer to the middle, closer to agreement. I don't think we're quite there yet. I'm hoping that this board will make some decisions on how to go forward, and then allow the subcommittee to hammer out the final negotiations. I do appreciate both agencies, their willingness to meet with us, willingness to negotiate, and I think, as Supervisor De La Cruz said, I think we can get there. We just need a little bit more time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Munzer. I want to thank the two agencies, the Farm Labor Association, the Homeless Coalition, maintaining a dialogue the last several weeks and trying to work towards solutions. And hearing the latest reports, it sounds like it's getting closer. And I really appreciate through some very difficult issues that the willingness to continue to sit down with each other and help this board make an easier decision. I want to thank the subcommittee for their continued efforts, and I think it's reasonable to continue to work a little bit harder to bring back a final resolution. One of the things, being in the agricultural industry myself, we have a serious ag labor problem that not only in this county but in the state. And labor camps such as ours helps relieve some of that strain. But all that aside, we have some real problems with ag labor right now, and it's a crisis, flat-out crisis. And we're lucky to have a labor camp that helps growers and provides a very necessity need for ag labor for the productiveness of the citizens. They're citizens and deserve everything that we are able to provide. With that, I'll open it up for public comment. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Sandra Rodriguez. Thank you, Board of Supervisors. My name is Sandra Rodriguez. I'm here in behalf of the volunteers that have gone to the shelter to volunteer. This last winter was my first time volunteering. Met very many wonderful people that were there either through their jobs, they had to probation, or through the school. It has been the most rewarding volunteer place that I have been to. It not only benefits our people, our friends, the homeless, but us as a community. I personally volunteered my family one night to go and cook. The eldest of 30-some years to the youngest of 5 years that went to go and serve a meal. And they keep asking, when are we going to go back to help our friends? So, I urge to keep this in mind. It not only helps the homeless people, our friends, but us as a community. We can go to a place that we can honestly say that we have given our hearts and our time for a very, very, very well cause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane Richardson.
Hi, I'm Diane Richardson. My granddaughter Teresa Copeland and Mr. Holte are the ones that opened the shelter 8 years ago. Very proud of my granddaughter. The community got involved because of Teresa. She had the school do fundraisers and collect food and stuff, and some of the stores like Kmart gave paper products and things for the shelter. So I think that with everything that she's done and Mr. Holte has done, and in these 8 years that it's been open, that it should continue to be open and not have the rent raised or charge the homeless any money, because if they had money to go buy food and eat in a restaurant, why would, they shouldn't have to pay for their food there. We helped feed the migrant workers when they came. After our people were done eating up there and stuff, then the migrant came in and they ate with us, and we cleaned up after them and everything, and it was a joy. Everybody loved it. Everybody did their part, and the community, keeping the churches and everyone involved, is very, very important to Teresa, and I'm sure to Mr. Holte too, because that was his dream. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Dory Bannister.
Hello, Board. Excuse me. You're a force to be reckoned with. It looks like you're all judges up there when you come in here. I think people must be very nervous talking with you. So I'm unsure a little bit of the finance contract side of this issue, but I just wanted to take a moment and really thank the farmer labor for allowing the homeless to have a shelter and a place during the winter. Our church has been very, very active with the homeless community, and our doors are open. We've done funerals. We go and we pray when we open up there at the shelter every year. And the faith base know that is a great blessing to give to the poor. It's just a biblical principle that when you give to the poor and those in need, that there's a blessing that goes with that. So you're going to have a whole group of folks that are going to be very excited about trying to do that. But not only with the homeless, I'm thinking also of the migrant camp too, in my mind. I mean, I think those are real needs in our community. Our challenge has always been not to enable the homeless, and that is really a challenge. So there's a different environment. Like, we have groups of people that sometimes try to go out and work with the homeless when they're on the streets or when they're not in the shelter, and it really is not a real safe environment. So what the shelter has provided is this awesome, safe environment for families, not only individuals, but families to go in and take part in doing a meal, providing meals, sitting with the people, praying with the people, and taking time with those that are actually in the shelter. And you know, we raised our kids doing that, and it's really interesting because they're both in San Diego. They're down there, and you ask them, what are you doing tonight? And every week they're out feeding the homeless, and they're involved. So it's a generational thing that gets developed in people that go out and give that way. I think that the challenge is the churches, they love to go in and do this. And it's the only place where they can go in and it would be safe for them. So my hope and desire is that there could be a real proper accountability and structure that could be developed through, I don't know, the board or those working together, that it could even be better, that there would be more accountability, more structure, and that everyone would feel very comfortable and at peace, and that the churches, at least the churches and folks who want to come in, will be able to feel like they can continue to come in and be a part of this whole area. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Board of Supervisors. My name is Ken Hoggard. I'm a resident of Hollister, and I'm a member of the church community here in Hollister. What's being passed around right now is a list of names. It's over 1,020 names that support the Homeless Coalition and the shelter. I'm here today speaking on behalf of a multitude of volunteers that go up to the shelter year after year. These volunteers consist not only of churches, but of businesses, of families, and individuals. These volunteers volunteer their time. They volunteer their cooking abilities and preparing meals. They volunteer their clothing. More than that, they volunteer their face-to-face interaction with our less fortunate people. And I think that the less fortunate actually crave this more than they do the food. It's important to us to volunteer at the shelter. The Farm Laborers Board, their proposal to charge $6 per client to a nonprofit organization that would allow their cooks to prepare meals for the clients, I believe would effectively cut off that spirit of volunteerism. I believe it would cut it off at the knees. We take great joy in serving our community, in serving our homeless, and some of us serve out of spiritual calling. I would ask you to continue to allow volunteers to provide meals at no cost to our Homeless Coalition. I would also urge you, as you make your decision in the following days, to think of the faces of our homeless community. They are also members of our community, and we need to take care of our own. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sharice Tyson, Johnny's Bar and Grill. First, I want to apologize for my attire. I went from the gym to work and ran here, and looking at you guys in your suits, I'm very uncomfortable. Anyway, I can't remember when I started helping out at the homeless shelter and cooking for them. And but I do remember the years of the burners that were very dangerous, that we turned up as high as we could just so we could move our hands because it was so cold. And we were so excited when the new kitchen was coming. And then the new kitchen came in, and it was just such a blessing and nice and warm. And luckily, I have a kitchen, but in between, I remember people going to the community foundation, fixing their food there and taking it in, and it's such a community project, and it affects the community as a whole. People will see me in the kitchen at Johnny's and stick their head in and saying, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm cooking for the homeless." "Oh, you need some help?" And I would have people lined up to want to be there, and it gave them a good feeling about themselves. So it's so important to this entire community, and I don't pretend to know what the California Farm Bureau's challenges are, or, you know, I don't know any of the details, except that I had heard something about this $6 a meal. And to me, that is absolutely absurd, because as somebody who donates, I'm not going to want to hand you a check and say, okay, go feed these people. That defeats the whole purpose. At Christmas we were there, we brought gifts. My grandson is so excited to go and be a part of it. I just think that idea just wouldn't work at all. And so I'm hoping that somehow they can come to some kind of conclusion that will work for both parties, because we do appreciate what the California Farm Bureau does. And like I said, I don't know what their challenges are, but this is a community event, and I just hate to see that go away. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And Mr. Bianchi.
Well, forgive me, I'm not going to call you judges. My name is Richard Bianchi. I'm president of the Farm Labor Association. I'm a farmer by trade, and I live farming. But as the Ag Commissioner said, farm labor is at a definite shortage, and probably like it's been not in my lifetime. You know, within farming, we throw around a lot of four-letter words, and I'm guilty of that myself, and are pretty readily available. But there's one four-letter word that we stay away from, and that word's camp, because the negative connotations that come with it are far and wide, and we've all seen and heard the negative connotations that come with farm labor camps. I'm happy to say I throw the word around camp freely, because we've got a shining star. We've got a camp that was made with a grant for farm labor workers. It's right now the occupancy is somewhere around 150 to 200 occupants, representing at least 12 different companies, a multitude of different labor contractors. So there's no worker is burdened to any individual employer. We're very proud of that. I think that the Ag Commissioner also referenced the fact that farming has changed over the last period of years. The need for farm workers is no longer a 7, 8, 9 month turnaround. It's 12 months. Diminishing numbers, absolutely, but the numbers are definitely going up as companies in San Bernardino County aren't relocating to Southern California. There's more need for workers. As the crops in San Bernardino County change, there's more need for workers in the off season. So, and I think it was referenced to some of the challenges. Those are the challenges that we're having to deal with. And what we're dealing with is first, we're representing the farm workers and their house. And second, we're representing San Bernardino County and the Board of Supervisors. So that anything that we're doing is coming from that direction. And not to degrade anything that the Homeless Coalition is doing. To be honest, I probably should put my name on that petition as supporting the homeless. That being said, our job as a Farm Labor Association is to represent that camp and represent San Bernardino County and the taxpayers that built that camp for the farm labor workers. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments? Please step forward.
Marvin Jones again. I certainly understand the rationale of San Benito County supporting the farm labor after the agriculture report we just had. You get some benefit from that. With the Homeless Coalition, that's not one of my charities that I support. I don't mind the Farm Bureau letting them use their facilities on an as available basis, but if there becomes a conflict, you need to support the farm labor organization. I recognize it is a charitable organization. The Homeless Coalition is a charitable organization. It's not one of the ones that I donate to. Lord, I recently donated to the Coptic Christians in Egypt. I don't know if it'll do any good or not, but I certainly do not hesitate to support some of the organizations, charity organizations. Homeless Coalition is just not one of mine, and I'd rather not see my taxpayer money go to their organization. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi there. My name is Kevin Manning. I represent A New Choice. I am currently running the kitchen up at the migrant camp and feeding the migrant workers. Some of the problems that we did have last year is I noticed that when people are talking about the Homeless Coalition and the migrant camp, they're referring to it as the Homeless Coalition shelter. It is a migrant camp. They are first. They didn't come first, just as the lady had mentioned. They would feed the homeless, and then if there was food or whatever, then they would feed the migrant workers. It's not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be the migrant workers first, and that's what I do. And that's what I would like to do year-round, because last year, when there were migrant workers still at the camp, they weren't able to get fed. I was getting pushed out the door earlier and earlier in the day. They had it at 6 o'clock, then it went to 5 o'clock, then it went to 4 o'clock. Well, some of the migrant workers don't even get back until 4:30 or 5. So I was unable to feed them. Some of the other issues that we had, that kitchen is brand new. There was no supervision on the employees or on the volunteers using the kitchen. You know, things were getting damaged. So I think those are things you need to take into consideration as well. I'm not a public speaker, so I'm not exactly sure what I'll just say, but we did try to work with the Homeless Coalition. We wanted to show them ways to make healthier foods, you know, and to feed the homeless better. A lot of the things we were seeing were, you know, they'd feed them spaghetti over and over again. That was just a common thing for them to do. And, you know, we would like to help the homeless. I still support the homeless. I help homeless right now. I had a gentleman come in the other day asking me to help his friend. I told him to send him up. I'll give him food. I don't want anybody to go hungry. We would like to work with them to where, yes, I hear how you're talking about $6 a meal. They get grants, okay? The Homeless Coalition, they do get grants, they do get donations, and a lot of things you have to consider too is that the volunteers that go up to the kitchen, none of them are certified. They've been running illegally. They finally just now got their health permit. So that's a lot of things that the county has to consider too. You have 300 volunteers running through there, and none of them have their food handler license. You know, I have to have insurance. I've got to do all that. So, and have a health permit and food management licenses and everything else. I don't know why you would allow, you know, them to get away with that.
Anyone else from the public? Oh, there's, we got a couple more speakers.
Good morning, supervisors. I'm Paul Hain. I'm with the Farm Labor Association / Farm Bureau. Probably I want to congratulate first of all the Homeless Coalition for the good work that they do, the supervisors for open ears and open minds. There are some pretty serious issues here. With the farm labor, migrant people up there, especially through the H-2A program, which I'm not an expert on, but it's kind of required for that labor to fix specifically nutritional specified meals. Having said that, it's difficult. Probably the biggest difficulty is sharing the kitchen, is trying to provide for the farm laborers and for the homeless folks as well. So I think we're a lot closer than we have been in the past couple of weeks, And I think we can continue to get it down to where the Farm Labor Association will be able to run a top-notch camp. We will be able to pay our expenses, and we will provide as much services for both the migrant worker and the homeless population as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Hi, Marty Richmond again from Hollister. I just want to say, it looks like we have two necessary and good programs running, and they're bumping into each other, which means that we need a short-term solution to keep some kind of non-aggression pact to keep them from getting in each other's way. And we need to start talking about a long-term solution, because it looks to me like the short-term solution is only going to be short-term. If the migrant labor population is going to change because of need and going to year-round crops and different things, and if the homeless population is going to continue to be a long-term issue, and I think it is going to be a long-term issue. I don't think there's any short way to solve it, and I hate to say this, but I just don't see making leaps and bounds getting better leaps by leaps and bounds. We know that you know what's going on with the we mentioned this morning the jail proposals and things, and people on probation have a tough time getting a job and so on and so forth. They don't want to go back to jail, and so some of them will need some help. I think the best answer is to try and get a non-aggression pact, even to the discomfort of both sides, unfortunately. So everybody's going to have to give in somewhere. Try to get one or two items that will relieve the stress, maybe an extra couple of refrigerators. That's a low-cost item if we can find the space to put it in, so they're not arguing about refrigerator space, because there's no reason to argue about refrigerator space. Just get more refrigerators. It's an easy solution. But I think at the same time, you got to start looking at a long-term solution. It appears to me, and I'm an outsider, I'm not an insider on this, I don't know all the statistics, but it appears to me that the long-term solution is you're going to have a different place for the homeless coalition to operate as a permanent place, because this is as both these populations keep bumping into each other, it gets to a point where it can't be done, and then we really got problems, because then it's a matter of survival, arguing about who goes in first. So I thank you for your time, and that's just a little piece of advice. Short-term solution, even to discomfort of both. Long-term solution, which means find a place for a homeless shelter permanently and suitably, and a good one. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Emerson?
Morning, Mr. Chair and Board. My name is Doug Emerson. I'm Chair of the Homeless Coalition Board. And I'd like to respond to some of the comments that were made. I didn't intend to speak, but we've made 3 proposals. Our last one is very late. Some of you just got it today. But in all of those proposals, if you read the first paragraph, we acknowledge and we recognize that the purpose of that, I use the word camp, or that facility up there, is for farm workers. We acknowledge that. And we also state, I think, in every proposal that anything we do up there cannot infringe on the rights of the farm workers or that whole program up there. We are secondary. We know that. We do believe that in the winter months there's sufficient rooms up there that are not being used. We do believe that the kitchen issue can be resolved. I think our last proposal has a decent resolution how we can share that. We can do that. We also acknowledge that by us being up there, whatever expense is incurred or whatever cost is incurred due to us being up there, we have to pay that. And we have no qualms about that. But we also believe that we should only pay our fair share. Whatever that comes out to be, we have to do that. Some of the other comments I will address. We have our own health permit. We've had that for some time. Our shelter manager is a certified food manager. A number of our staff have food, I think it's called handlers certification. So we have those certifications. We carry our own liability insurance. I fully agree, strange as it may seem, with Marty Richmond. And
Wow.
there was one other time. I don't remember it. For us, that facility up there is not a long-term solution. It is a short-term solution. 5 years ago, our board adopted a 5-year strategic plan to have our own building in 5 years. And what happened there, and we were all set to go, we had money in the bank, and you guys may even remember that there was some, and we were primarily funded with CDBG. There was a funding problem in CDBG where there was a year there was no funding and there was an off cycle. That account that we had in reserve pretty much went to running the shelter. We're back up now, so financially again, from our Jazz Under the Stars and our donations, we are in a position to aggressively look for our own site. So that's, if I can have about 30 more seconds, that's our long-term plan. Maybe this board can help us with that, because we've had some serious talks about going back and revisiting, was one of Marley Holte's ideas, the armory out there. And the armory.
Oh, the armory.
You know, the building that sits vacant out there. And I know there's politics we'd have to go through and bureaucracies, but for us, that's a possible solution. And maybe it would help if we had some political support for that and looking at it. But just want to respond to some of the comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Emerson. No more. You had your shot. Thank you. Anyway, with no further public comment, I'll bring it back to the board. Supervisor Barrios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do believe that they're getting closer, and I want to give them the opportunity to get that accomplished with the committee if necessary. But I think both agencies know what they need to do. They need to work out the details, the issues. We shouldn't be working out the details and the issues at this level. It should be done at that level. I think it's manageable, and you're getting there. I've been on both sides. I've been homeless, and I've also been a farm worker, so I understand the great need for both. And so I support both agencies. I believe that you can complement each other. Lady used the word joy. It is a joy. You can work side by side and have joy, but there also has to be accountability, which it sounds to me from Doug's comments that there will be accountability. So, and also ag, we know that it's our greatest industry. If it thrives and the county thrives, and hopefully with that and other industries, we can develop and we can grow the efforts for the homeless. So with an answer to your comment or request that the supervisor support you in your efforts for permanent housing, I certainly raise my hand and say, I'll be there, and I will help you do whatever I can to get there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm a chirping right now, and I'm pleased, as I stated earlier, that the two organizations are working together. And just from my involvement through this whole past year, and I know our committee has worked very, very hard with both organizations to try to, get something, some of the issues resolved. The 1,000 people that signed this petition, and I want to be very clear to some of the volunteers that give their time and efforts to a very worthwhile cause that really they give their hearts to, is that the biggest supporters of the Homeless Coalition is the Farm Labor Association, the Farm Bureau, and their willingness to work with the Homeless Coalition to provide for their need for a shelter during a time that the camp is not utilized at its complete optimum vacancy. And, as I stated earlier, the importance of that labor camp to this county and to the industry is, paramount. And first and foremost, it is a labor camp. That's what we got the grant for. We can't jeopardize that. But if we could help and partner That's the key, and I'm very encouraged with the fact that the Homeless Coalition is moving closer to the Farm Labor Association to get this resolved, and I'm confident that our committee could work and set our agreement with the Farm Labor Association, and then the Farm Labor Association, with their graces, is working with the Homeless Coalition to set the parameters of how they work together with the kitchen issue and a couple other details. But I agree with Supervisor Barrios. That's where it needs to evolve from. Is that clear enough direction for the
Yes, yes, Mr. Chair, and my just 2 cents to the conversation is that I too believe that that facility is for the farm workers. At the end of the day, when the dust is cleared, it will still remain in a farm workers facility.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Munzer?
Couple of comments. One, I would like to direct staff that there is an issue of whether we have ever gotten the state's blessing that the Homeless Coalition is able to use the facility as a homeless shelter. So we need to resolve that, whatever it takes to get the state's blessing on that. Find out if we've had it, if we do have it, or if we don't have it, and what we need to do to get it. That needs to be resolved.
I can tell you where we're at with the status on that. We have not requested through the state to utilize that facility for the Homeless Coalition. With the Farm Labor Association utilizing the facility. We have since requested that of the state. We are awaiting a response from the state. So we hope to receive a favorable response with that. We've done this before with other with a different division within the state, and we've been approved. So we think it's going to go that way, but we'll make sure that we bring it back to the board.
Very good. Also, as it was pointed out in some of the speakers' comments, I've talked with some of the church groups that have gone up to the camp, and it is important to them. They feel it is important for their members to be able to go up there, prepare the meals, and then serve it. It was said several times that if that's not part of the equation, then they feel that they would lose their volunteers from participating in assisting the homeless. So I think that needs to be realized, and we need to figure out how to bring that about. The last sentence in the petition talks about the Homeless Coalition going forward at no increase in cost. I don't know if that's possible. You know, we all know that we're in inflationary times. We're in a recession, but we're still in inflationary times. I'm not sure that we can go forward on fees that were set up 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, however, and promise those same fees without an increase. That may have to be entered in. I would like this board to make, and I'll make it in a form of motion, that we make the determination that we are going forward with the Farm Labor Association as running the camp for us, because there's been questions of whether they will continue to run the camp or not, whether we go out to an RFP, whether we do it in-house, and I would like to say, to have us, or my motion would be that we go forward with a 5-year contract with the FLA and allow the subcommittee to work out the details and bring it back to the details, bring back to the full board. And then also that we act as facilitators to bring the Homeless Coalition and the FLA in agreement on how the Homeless Coalition will use the facilities. So that is my motion.
I'll second it for discussion.
Discussion,
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
I have a second and up for discussion, Supervisor De La Cruz.
Thank you. I don't know if we're allowed to make motions to that extreme, especially in light of discuss Farm Labor Association and Homeless Coalition contracts provide direction staff. Maybe the motion can state to direct staff to bring back a contract at the next board meeting And then at that time, the subcommittee can work out the details, and then when that motion does come to the board at the next meeting, everything will be in par, which will be a full-blown with everybody's approval.
And the way I understood the motion by the maker of the motion is to make that determination, which I think and of course, the contract would come back at a later date.
Then okay, sounds good to me.
Council's nodding, so I believe we're going in the right direction.
So the purpose
we're
of
not establishing the contract right now,
Right.
but it's a direction to staff to prepare, and that's
Bring it
what
back.
So then,
I
just
understand it.
a crazy thought out there, just plain devil's advocate, and if no compromise can be reached, we're still moving with the Farm Labor Association 5-year contract, right?
Correct, because we have to have somebody in place to run the camp for us.
Right.
All right.
Okay, I have a
Will be a
motion.
compromise, though. I'm very confident.
And I agree.
Yep.
I agree, too. I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. We'll move on to the next item, and I'll, direct our ad hoc committee to continue to work with both agencies.
We lost, well, we can
We'll
continue.
give a minute to people to clear out, but I'm not taking any breaks today
Okay.
because I'm going to be
Because you're going to
gone
have to leave,
at
yes.
12.
I'm okay with that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great.
All right.
I'm there.
The CEO, you want to introduce the next item?
I sure will. All right, Mr. Chair, this particular item is item number 22 on the agenda.
Cross them off real quick.
And this is part of the economic development for the county. This is under the Economic Restructuring Committee that Supervisor Munzer and myself are a part of. This committee has approved an initial phase of the wayfinding project, and they've come to the city, San Juan Bautista, as well as the county, and that's why we're here today.
If we could take our conversations outside, please. Okay.
Okay. And the request is to move forward with this particular phase 1 of the design and planning. And the request has been made of San Juan Bautista, 10%, as well as the city of Hollister at 60%. Each one respectively $2,475 for San Juan Bautista and $14,850 for the city of Hollister. Today, what we're coming to your board is to move forward with this particular project and to assist with this project, and it's going to be 30% for the county, and that's $7,425. And that's pretty much what I had to present to today. I know we have Brenda Weatherly here to add any more comments, as well as Supervisor Munzer to discuss anything else that they'd like to talk about.
Ms. Weatherly, would you like to have any further comments? I have a question for you anyway. Anyway, my question, Supervisor Munzer and I had attended a few months ago a presentation brought by the Downtown Association, and it was very enlightening. I'm very, very supportive with the signage. I think that's something that has been lacking in countywide and in our two cities. The only thing that, and it's takes some upfront costs here, is design and planning, and that's what we're paying for right now. And it's the two cities and the county paying for that cost. There's looking at the report, to implement the design and planning is probably triple that cost. Where are we to get the money once we do all this?
Well, once we have the system designed and we have identified what the costs are going to be, then we can go out and look for funding for those different costs. And it could be, if we're doing signage to the golf courses or the hotels, that they actually help pay for the cost of those signs. So until the system is actually designed and we can figure out which pieces make sense to go after which pots of money, that's when we would do that. I think it's going to be a group effort, a collaboration of all the government and actually properties that benefit from the wayfinding that receive the visitors.
Yeah, and that's the thought that crossed my mind when I read this, is that it's, right now, we're bearing the costs and our budgets are tight, but not knowing where the additional money is come from to implement the program. And I really believe that the private sector should be,
I think they're going to be paying the
absolutely
majority of
involved
it.
in this.
Yeah. I think once it's designed, we have something we can sell. We have a price tag and we have something to sell. And that makes it easier to sell to the private sector because they get the benefit of the wayfinding program and making it easier for visitors to come and participate in our community easily and get back on the roads to wherever they're going.
Right. And so the second part of my question is once those costs are established and we're partnering with the private sector, would the implementation of the plan go and emphasize within the whoever annies up the most money, say it's the wine industry, would we be able to get revenue from the wine industry to implement the wayward signs, and if say the hospitality industry doesn't step up, well, they don't get the signage that they want?
I would say that's probably the way it would go.
Okay, well,
I think it's in their best interest to pay to help make that all happen, so.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Supervisor Barrios?
I love the idea. It really is wonderful. Are we going to be using the branding that we got way back that I sat in on, which was fabulous? That will be incorporated into this?
That's the plan. I mean,
that is the plan.
We will work with this firm to help design that system. And with regards to San Juan Bautista, they have their own signage, and they're very particular, and I think we can work within those
And you can work
parameters,
that.
too.
And I'm just hoping the company is better than their spelling. In one page, oh my gosh. This is just one page.
You found typos everywhere?
Oh, Clinettes instead of clients, low action instead of location, preparatorian instead of preparation, utilities instead of utilities. So, when you have a company that is working with wording and all, please, they have to be more careful than
I
this.
believe we'll have a committee just helping decide how this is all going to happen.
But
and we will definitely be proofreading.
Yeah, I hope they're good at what they do because it is an excellent idea. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board? CEO Espinoza?
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to add to this is that the funding source would be coming out of our Housing and Economic Development under the 267 budget, and we have $10,000 there for that. So I just wanted to make sure that's what the plans were for that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, what's this HDA project management fee, 10%? What's that?
I'm learning my lessons on how to fund my organization. We no longer receive any funding from the government at all, so we're having to build in that type of information or that funding structure to help me do the job.
Stays with the HDA.
So we will be coordinating this project.
Okay.
You're transparent, and I think that's good.
Okay. I might have had a momentary lapse of concentration. Where do we get the $7,000 from?
Yeah, that was gonna be coming from our budget unit number 267. That's our Housing and Economic Development budget unit. And so we have $10,000 associated or put aside for these types of things.
Yeah.
And that's again up to the pleasure of the board if they want to move forward with this and go ahead and utilize these funds for this particular project.
And so I want to come back to Ms. Weatherly. You still serve on the EDC committee, and would the EDC be okay with us kind of pulling that $7,000 from that allocation?
I can't answer for that.
I'm sorry about putting you on the spot for that, but
that's a different hat.
I know they continue on their agenda to discuss the report that they were supposed to submit to this board, and we set aside that $7,000, but I mean that $10,000 that we had last year that we didn't utilize, and we moved it forward in case we needed to, invest into some sort of program, but. But I think it's a good use of the funds.
I do too.
And they're aware of the project.
Okay.
So they know that we're coming to you and asking for funding.
But Mr. Chair, this is taxpayers' money. This is county general fund budget. It's not their money.
No, it's not EDC's money, that's
okay,
right.
so,
And,
I just wanted to
but
make that
it's-
clear.
The way I view it is that it's money that we set aside for economic development, and this is economic development.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, I'll buy that.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up for public comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for an action.
I move that we authorize the interim CAO to pay $7,425 for a countywide wayfinding sign project for Phase 1.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you
Opposed,
very
hearing
much.
none. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. All right, so we have our, we're on item number 23, and we have our fire person here, Michael O'Connor from the City Hollister City Fire Department, and he's been gracious enough to come here today to give us a presentation, a quarterly presentation to your board per your request. You actually gave this request, I believe, in June. Actually, yeah, June. I think it was in June, the early part of June, to give a report to you on the status of Fire Station Fire Station 3. An update on Fire Station 4, call status, as well as the volunteer status. So we have Michael here to give you a presentation on this.
Good afternoon, or good morning. Hopefully I'll get you out of here by lunchtime. Basically, a little timeline. On the 23rd of April, you guys agreed to a cooperative agreement with the City of Hollister, and we started moving forward on a transition at that point to do the suppression administrative duties for the fire service countywide. On the 18th of June, San Juan agreed to the same cooperative agreement with us. On the 23rd, a few days later, we started that agreement, giving suppression activity for all the citizens of the county, the City of Hollister, and San Juan Bautista. So far, everything's been running pretty well. We've had a couple hiccups here and there. We've had a couple busy days here and there. On the average, we're running 10 calls a day, about 300 calls a month. Most of those calls are still in and around the City of Hollister. I did do a call sheet there, and I do have it, but the computer that you have here is not coming up. So it says low battery, so no, it's low, it got a low battery, so. But anyway, the call ratio is mostly around the City of Hollister. So it hasn't been any real significant time delays, anything like that. Actually, our overall times responses, I think, have dropped because of the communication center going to one communication center, not being delayed to go to additional centers, additional dispatching going out, as well as we've dropped all the boundaries. The closest piece of equipment is responding to that call.
Excuse me,
Go ahead.
Mike, I need to run to another.
You got it.
I have an appointment. I'm going to turn over the gavel to Vice Chair Munzer. And I just want to say, for the record, I think you've done a real good job as far as bringing this whole program together. And there's still a lot of work to do, but appreciate everything that you're doing. Thanks.
Chairman Patel, before you leave, could you address some scheduling? Because we have some scheduling issues for this afternoon in closed session. So what are we doing?
Closed session, I asked Vice Chair Munzer to continue the meeting as, you know, we have agendized.
So you won't be here?
I'm not be there for the afternoon session. So hopefully the board makes the decisions. I have confidence that we could move forward with all the issues that we need to in the afternoon.
And
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, can we try to finish the regular agenda before we break for lunch?
I'm going to give it to the Vice Chair to do that.
Vice Chair, I'm going to encourage you to do that.
I'm gone at 12. That's your guys' problem. You can
First
do whatever
meeting,
you want.
I got
I'm
a
gone.
revolt already.
Go ahead and shut it down for a second here.
See if you can shut it down.
They only done two, that's their
I know,
problem.
but it may not have to.
Not going anywhere.
Give me a, I'm just going to go, you've got the handout, there are handouts in the back. The call ratio, I just got that this morning, I'm looking for it here on my drive, so basically 300 calls on the average per month. Our calls, responses are approximately 6 to 7 minutes to the average calls. That's counting calls that we're going 45 minutes to South County, New Hydra and stuff like that. Those are into those calls. I did not delete those calls from the overall time. So we're looking at 6 to 7 minute responses. Fairly good. Can be improved with additional stations and all that, but additional costs. So on June 23rd, like I said, we started the responses. On the 3rd of July, we had probably one of the heaviest days on record of the consolidation so far. We had a major structure fire, 100-acre grass fire, several small fires, and this all came in an hour. Approximately 8 calls in 1 hour came into the 911 system. At no time did we not have all the calls, units responding to those calls, as well as we had an additional equipment at the station covering it in case additional calls came in. So at no time we were drawn down to 0. We continued to respond equipment, structure rigs, grass rigs, water tenders, anything that was needed for CAL FIRE's response to the wildland in South County, as well as Santa Clara to the north that had a working fire, and our structure fire we had on Tiburon Drive that day, which was a garage fire that ran for about 4 to 5 hours. We were there suppressing that fire and overhauling it. So the crews did a great job. The consolidated crew of the county fire reserves, San Juan, participated in that fires. They came over and assisted us, and as well as the Hollister personnel did an excellent job on that day when we were given a task to respond to all those calls. July, 4th of July, the rally basically went off without any issues, and we had really no problem. We covered everything. There was no significant high volume of calls. There was additional calls because of the additional people in town, but nothing out of the ordinary. We continued till the end of July. We had a little bit of a human resource issue at the end of July, trying to get people's medicals and backgrounds done in the new force that came in. We had to suspend some people to get them motivated to get those physicals done, as well as our human resources to get them to process those people a little quicker. So other than that, we went through the month of July and into August. Station 4 is almost finished. They painted the interior. They're finishing up the outside stucco on that complex, so we'll start having people sleep in a little bit better facility than what they're sleeping in over there right now. They're sleeping in one big room. They cook in that room. They train in that room. It's a one-room firehouse, but it will have multiple sleeping quarters when it's done. If I can think of some other stuff. We did surplus one of the county rigs that came over to us. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Your old engine that came over to us in the early 90s is when it was purchased by you. It came over with a frozen pump and some mechanical issues. It was assessed that it would be not worth putting a lot of additional money into that engine in the condition that it is and the way we received it. So it has been taken to the county yard to be surplused out. And I think Westreek is, Wittry is working on that to, it's out at his yard right now to see how we can go through that surplusing process. And that's something, if we need to have that engine, if that's something you want to keep those number of engines, we will probably have to come back to you and ask for it. Right now, I think we have sufficient engines and water tenders to meet the daily needs. We're going to probably need to get some new stuff to meet some stuff, but not immediate needs to be addressed. Other than that, I'm here for questions. Station 3, we're in negotiations right now with a facility out there. As soon as we get some solid numbers on that facility, I think we can move forward on it.
Any questions from Supervisor Rivas?
Chief?
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Awesome. Hey, you did mention that you had some suspensions, and so I'm just curious, maybe, I know that, fire department, as we all are, going through this period of transition with CAL FIRE, with the San Juan. So how is the interagency, the coordination, and I guess you could say the assimilation to Hollister Fire, how has that all gone?
I think anytime there's change, people sometimes resist it and stuff like that. I can't say everybody jumped on board immediately. I think a lot have. There's been a few that have gone the other direction. They've given up their gear and decided that the time and efforts that they're going to be required of them were not something they wanted to do. So something I think it was emphasized during the meetings of the fire committee and with the board and the councils was that we raise the bar, make sure training, make sure all the OSHA laws and everything being applied equally and being considered on, county-wide. So we did that, and there was some resistance.
And maybe I missed it in your presentation, but the recruitment of volunteers, how has that gone? And what are the current numbers of like the reserves? And
We're right now sitting at 42 reserves. We're bringing an additional 12 on here by the end of the month. We got them in testing right now. We plan on recruiting out at the fair, and right now, anyone that's interested in being a reserve or having fire-related training is more than willing to put an application with us. We'll look at that application and do the process.
so it's just kind of just an open recruitment,
Yeah,
and then
right now it's open recruitment. It's on the City of Hollister's website. You can go to their website and see the position. It's been there for about a month. There's applications at both City Hall and at Hollister Fire Department. We are actually accepting those applications only at Hollister Fire. It comes to us. We will process those applications. Human Resources is involved in the medical and background section only.
Okay.
And then the rest of it's done by us. The training's done by us as well.
Well, that's great to know. Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Supervisor De La Cruz.
Chief, in reference to the volunteers program, I heard from a couple of applicants that submitted applications that never got a response back. Where's, I guess, who's to blame out there? Why wasn't there
That's
some
one of the
fault?
reasons why at the end of August, Hollister Fire is now overseeing the whole application process as well as doing that. It's a representation of our department. We want the best out there, so we've taken it over as we're doing the accepting of the applications, the processing, answering the questions. And City Hall, Human Resources was kind of overloaded with the amount of people coming in and the transition, plus the other hiring going on in the city. They weren't able to perform to what I felt was necessary. So we've taken some of that back with agreement with the city manager and the council.
So
we're doing that.
those volunteers that just for whatever reason didn't get a call, didn't get a letter, didn't one call, whatever, they're off the no list anymore, right? They can never apply for future
A
volunteers.
couple of them have been called back. We looked back at applications that we had received that met the minimum requirements, and we have called them back. I would encourage anybody that thinks that they weren't dealt with correctly to submit a new application. We'll review it. I don't know what criterion was used back in May, April, and prior to that. I know what's being done now and what the transition criterion is, and I'll tell you what, everybody will get a fair shot. Equal opportunity.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Lester, thank you. I want to thank you for the effort. I think no news is good news. I haven't gotten any complaints from anybody, and that's a good thing. And thank you for being accessible, because I know you've been there every time I've needed something. So keep up the good work, and hopefully it continues to be without issue, and you work through the hiccups.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Chief, I just want to let you know that there still is concern in South County And so we need to keep addressing those concerns as they crop up. And I know you have. I'm also disappointed, I'm not going to, the letter I think we all received from the lawyers, I'm very disappointed in seeing that. But hopefully with time we can mend that
I'm keeping my arms
relationship.
open on that
Yeah.
situation,
Exactly.
you know. I'm willing to work out on any area that's possible. Not commenting a lot on that.
Right.
There is going to be a comment coming back from the attorney for the city at least. I think if we can work together to maybe work on one letter to return to that, I think it'd be a benefit to all of us.
Yes. Okay. Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I think that was just to receive the report.
This is a real quick snapshot.
Thank you, Chief.
What happened. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Fire Chief O'Connor. So the next item on the agenda is item number 24, and this is going to be presented to us by...
Mr. Chair, you have to recuse yourself. I have a 12 o'clock appointment.
Okay. Do we want to, what's the pleasure of the board? Do we want to deal with these?
I'd like to continue if the rest of the board is on board.
Huh?
We can continue. Let me just use the restroom.
Okay. All right, we'll take a 5-minute break.
5-minute break. Thank you. I mean, 2 items. I think they're going to go quick.
Yeah.
5-minute break?
We don't need no stinking quorum.
5-minute break? Okay.
My first meeting,
Where's everyone at? No, I think...
It's not plugged in, that's why it's dying.
That's great.
Yeah, the letter came in from an attorney demanding that, I don't know why they sent it to us, we got nothing to do with it. The cease and desist responding to fires in the Romulus Fire District.
It's CAL FIRE.
Right, it's CAL FIRE. So,
There was 4 bids, spread, the low was 6.
Below the freezing temperature of it.
It's freezing in here? That's the man.
No, it's not.
You go sit back
No, it's
there.
not.
You go sit back.
We fight.
You go sit back
We
there.
fight about this all the time.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. Then it kicks off and I go, yay.
Well, get him a fan.
Come take your jacket off.
And it's been a joke, it's just been a joke rumor out there. Nothing, no plan for that.
Okay, if we can get going.
You know what, whenever I think it's going to be a fast version, it goes forever.
Yeah. Are we ready? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to meet. Okay. Yeah, so this particular item, item number 24, is going to be presented to us by Steve Wittry, our Public Works Director, and this is going to be discussing encroachment permits and improvements, plan checks. So, Steve, Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ray. Basically, what this item is to try to see what we can do to try to work with our partner agencies. County code requires us to have full cost recovery for engineering services. Those engineering services for the time that's spent to either inspect or to plan check or to review projects that come into our office. One of those fees that we collect for is for encroachment permits or improvement plans that are happening in our roadways. We have a project, as you're all aware, that we're a partner with the San Benito County Water District, the City of Hollister, and Sunny Slope County Water District to try to bring a better quality of water to the Hollister urban area. One of the projects, one of the steps, increments, improvement projects that's going to take place is the installation of a pipeline, distribution pipeline, water pipeline down Fairview Road. The pipeline will be installed within our right-of-way. It's the most convenient place for it. And according to our code, is subject to those encroachment permit fees and plan review fees. For that particular project, the fee is approximately $48,000 is what will be coming to the county for those inspection and plan check review fees. That's the estimate based upon a formula that's been adopted, and it's kind of like, I included that as backup documentation to the report as to where fees are derived from, but it's formula driven based upon the cost of the improvements that are going within that right-of-way. One of the things that we would like to do in Public Works is have the ability to call it negotiate, call it work with our partner agencies to try to come up with a way that we can get some mutual benefit out of this process, as well as achieve cost recovery. One of the things that we have at our disposal, among the many funds that we work with in Public Works, is our road funds. As I've stated, and as all you're very well aware, full cost recovery, we can't just say give them the break and then not make up with those funds somewhere else. In situations with the roads, for example, we could try to work something out for a trade in lieu type thing or some kind of road work that would occur to help improve the road, and then we can basically backfill that $44,000 or $48,000 or whatever the encroachment permit fee is with our traffic dollars, and then therefore there is no net county cost still to that process. The county code, the way it's written, doesn't really allow us to do that without the board to go through the process, and that's kind of where I wanted to have the discussion. Lost my train of thought, but basically where we're at is that we have a situation where there are county costs that are being incurred. The project is a project that is supported by the San Benito County. They are projects that we have a long-standing relationship with the water district, both water districts and the city, for the urban water process. So we're kind of at a dilemma, and I'm looking for some input from the board as to how we'd like to proceed, whether it's somehow a waiver of fees. If a waiver was to occur, then those fees would have to be made up from somewhere else, which the only place that we can do that in Public Works would be our general fund, which is then going to be offsetting those fees accordingly, which we don't really have in our budget, as you're well aware. So that's where the discussion is at, and I'd like to hear what the board would like us to do to proceed forward with this process. And I also have both Don Reidenhauer and Jeff Catania, the directors of the respective water districts, who are the proponents of this particular project.
Mr. Vice Chair, thank you so much. Steve, first of all, we cannot incur costs that we're not going to be compensated for to come out of our general fund. We know that we can't go there. So you talked about the road fund. Now, does that mean then that we would have less road funds to be able to accomplish our goals? I mean, I love working with the agencies, and I think we're a great partner, but we have to make sure that we're not in a position where we're not recovering our costs somehow.
The goal would be to try to have work that was going to be required on that road to be incorporated into that project. For example, it's a pipeline project, and what we can't do, we have to be very careful that we don't ask them to do more work than the fees would be, because we can't have them be in a position, or the county can't be in a better position than what we would have been
had they not
done the work. So we can't have them say, okay, pipeline in Fairview Road, fix Fairview Road, and then we'll all be,
so
we can't do that. Right. So what we want to do is something short of that. We want to say, okay, what value could we get that's roughly the same as the value we would get for the encroachment permit fee, whether it's some overlay work or some chip seal, whatever that value would work, then we could have them apply that. Hopefully they get some cost savings, the thought process, so they get cost savings because they have a contractor mobilized on site.
Right.
They can do some of that work at a cheaper cost for them, net cost for them. We get benefits still with our roads funds because there's an improvement to the roads that we would have otherwise had done. So therefore, we can make the nexus that those road funds were spent to improve the roads, and it's appropriate to backfill those encroachment permit fee dollars. That's the thought process. That's
So it would
going
be in kind, there would really be $0 loss to the county, because we would have had to do that road work at some point anyway, and it'll be traded, so to speak.
And that was the thought process we had. And as if you look at on Fairview Road, that's kind of the way it's been set up. You see where we've done our chip seal work and where
Right.
we haven't done any work. We've kind of left a gap where this project was going to be twofold. One is because we knew the project was coming down the line. So even if we couldn't come to some kind of arrangement, there wouldn't be a situation where we're cutting through a new asphalt surface, and then that gets all kinds of public outcry in terms of you just pave the road while you're cutting through it, can't you coordinate? So we have coordinated this effort, so that's why that section of road from Sunny Slope Road towards Fairview Road
Right.
has not been really touched in anticipation of this project. Now, the other thing with this particular project, it does have a little bit of a history because at one point in time, it was actually in our capital projects budget that we were actually going to install this pipeline with our John Smith Road project. As you're aware, we had to separate those projects out because John Smith Road is on an indefinite timeline because of the issues with the Tiger Salamander, and we couldn't hold up their needed water project for that process. Now, at that particular time, this encroachment permit fee would not have been applied because it would have been a county-sponsored project, and it would have been a component where they would have just reimbursed us for the pipeline being installed. So it's a complicated process, I understand that, and it is, that's why I need the board direction to proceed forward. And
Well, I just trust that you, together with the other two agencies, will just keep track of what it is, and I'm sure it'll be fair across the board, transparent, and we can move forward. So that's my position. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay. So, Steve, you'll come back to us at some point and tell us what arrangements have been made? Or are you looking for
I'm
wider permission to do this whenever this situation comes up?
I'm basically what I wanted to try to do is try to get some direction from the board as to how they feel these policies should be addressed. This is going to be something that happens with this particular project in particular again. As they build the West Hills plant, the transmission line from that pipeline is going to come down Riverside Road, go across Nash Road Bridge, and we're going to find ourselves in the same situation where that would require an encroachment permit fee and the inspection fees and so forth as well. So what I would like to try to do is to try to get direction from the board as to how, perhaps only on specific to this particular project, the urban water project, how the board wants to handle encroachment permit fees. I think for anything in the future that was something like this, I would come to the board for a different direction in terms of, I'm not looking for a blanket policy going into the future.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a policy that can be applied to the urban water policy and the urban water project, because I know, like I said, I know there's this one that's on our plate today, and I know that in the coming months, there'll be another one coming down the line for Riverside Road. What I would like to do is like I said, the applicants have requested a waiver of the fee entirely. Don Reidenhauer was formerly the Department of Public Works director for Napa County, and in Napa County, it's a different situation. They routinely waive these fees, as I understand, for partner agencies. They just say, you know, it's public money, it's public money. We did a quick phone survey of some of the other surrounding counties, and it's up in the air.
It's up in the air.
It's not a firm and hard policy. There are some that waive, there are some that don't. It's just, it's a board determination.
Because it's different color money, and, you know, they have their funding from a different source than I think we need to ask council to make sure that we're doing the right thing by waiving and then just getting in-kind benefit or service.
I don't really know the answer to that. I think it's okay. I think we should probably, though, once Steve decides what the deal is going to be, something should be brought back to the board, and at a minimum, we should have the board approve it through a resolution or something, so put some official stamp on it.
Okay.
You know, probably the correct way to do it, and it's probably also the most complicated, is to change our ordinance. I don't know if Steve was anticipating that.
I mean, if we have to do that, we have to do that. It is a complicated process. It doesn't help us with that situation today.
Right.
But, you know, like I say, I think that as we work through this process, you know, maybe that's something we talk to your office about and seeing if there has to be tweaked somehow to allow that to happen. But I think that right now where we're at is we have a project that has just been bid. They have some numbers in, and they are looking for construction, you know, very quickly. So trying to have something that can come to fruition and let that project move forward as expeditiously as possible.
I can make a motion at this time, Mr., unless did you ask for public comment?
Oh, yes.
I don't know.
Are there any public comment?
Yep. My name is Don Ridenauer. I'm the general manager of Sunny Slope County Water District. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I don't think, you know, I think I can speak for Mr. Catano and the city on this. Is I don't know that we really dispute covering the cost of the county. I guess I also have, you know, I'm used to a county that didn't charge other public agencies fees for encroachment permit fees. But I also think that it'll look at the formula, how you charge those fees, because charging a percentage based on the value of the project may not be an or may not be accurate in the way, the amount of time that your county staff is spending on the project. In this case, it's $22,000 for a plan check fee. That's quite a lot of funds for, you know, a project, you know, public funded project. And I guess I would wonder is $22,000 really going to be spent on county staff time going through and pouring through our plans when you have at least 3 other agencies that have looked at those plans, public agencies, nonprofit agencies looking at those plans, as well as their hired consultant who performed the design. The other is in the inspection. It's a little more than $25,000 for inspection. Are you going to have someone out inspecting that job, you know, for $25,000? You know, I'd suspect that's a lot of staff time to have out on another publicly funded job when we're going to have hired inspectors on that job. We're going to be doing all that testing, you know, ourselves. We work regularly, Sunny Slope does, with the city, and we kind of, you know, inspect and share some of those inspections, and we don't pay those encroachment permit fees when we're working, you know, within city streets. At least Sunny Slope doesn't. I've looked at other counties as well, and while some charge and some don't, the ones I've talked to in the surrounding areas, with the exception of Santa Cruz County, doesn't charge very much. The costs are significantly lower than this. So I would request that the board look at the way that they're calculating these fees for projects, and also consider this is another public agency. If something goes wrong, we have a trench failure or something that causes a problem with that roadway, we're not a developer, we're not a private for-profit company that's going to go away and may not even be in existence when that problem occurs, you know, beyond that 1-year warranty period or something that you're going to have to go out and chase. We're a public agency in this community. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be held accountable and responsible for the work that was either performed by our own staffs or by, you know, a contractor working on our behalf. So that's what I would request the board consider. So thank you.
Don?
Yeah.
I guess my problem right now is, do we have time to look at our ordinance and see what flexibility we have, or are you under a time constraint to know what you're going to be charged so you can go forward with your project?
We are most definitely under a time constraint, but so if we need to work under the existing ordinance, or some, you know, if there's some accommodation that can be made, that would be definitely desirable for the 3 agencies who are paying for this project. But we are going to have future projects, so that ought to be considered for future projects as well.
So I'm assuming this is for the less salt plant?
Yeah, our Fairview Road pipeline, which is in your public right-of-way.
So if we come up with, as Supervisor Barrios said, some kind of in-kind improvements, whatever that means, for this part of the project, and then hopefully we can look at the ordinance before the West Hills project comes online, then maybe we can deal with it at that point. So would that be acceptable to you?
I think that would be acceptable. I'd even, even take that farther is I think that if we just had Mr. Wittry track his staff time and we paid actual staff time costs, I'd be comfortable with that as well, because these formula-based fees, they're just that, a formula. They aren't actual costs. They're an estimate of what they might cost, and I suspect that his actual staff time would be lower than these fees.
Okay. I think the only issue we have is we don't know if we have the flexibility in our
Right.
ordinance
Yeah,
to do that
understandable.
right now for this project.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you. Thanks for your consideration, too.
With that being said, Mr. Vice Chair, what I'll do is I will make a motion that we direct staff to work to be able to negotiate some in-kind, improvements based on an equitable amount that will be determined and written up in a resolution with some findings, perhaps, that can come back to the board to make this go forward. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's fine. Basically, you negotiate a contract and bring it back to the board for approval, and we can discuss among staff the best way for the board to consider and adopt it.
Okay.
One clarification that I might want to ask, just to make sure, because I don't want to impact their time crunch at all. I'm very positive we can work out some kind of arrangement, and in the interim, they would need to get an encroachment permit to construct that project. So what I would what I'm suggesting that I would do is, at this point, issue the encroachment permit for their project to allow construction to occur with the understanding that we can work something out in terms of whatever this in-kind process means.
I can work that into the motion so that we have an understanding that it can move forward with that final agreement resolution.
Mr. Vice Chair, in addition to that, is it, maybe this question for Mr. Wittry, do you think that at least looking at the ordinance overall can occur in the future?
I think we can tweak the ordinance a little bit. I think that one of the things that we have with a fee-based ordinance like this is not every job that comes in is exactly the same, but what you try to do is look at the overall mass that comes in and try to come up with that aspect of it. The ordinance itself is tiered for different values of projects. One thing, it is a little bit difficult to try to determine what level of trust we have, and this is no offense to Don at all, what level of trust we have with the current inspection staff out there, given some issues that have happened recently. Now, I understand there's a contractor going to be doing that, so that will be somewhat alleviated, but I think that's a concern that we need to make sure is apparent. And then, like I say, in terms of the design aspect of it, there are hours that are spent on that. There's negotiation back and forth. This already actually has occurred. That has already occurred, so we can go back and look at those things. But I think that in general sense, those fees are formula-based for simplicity because some are a little bit more than some are less than they should be. We try to get to an even area where it comes across. But I think that something with a public agency or a partner agency like this, we can try to work in some kind of language in the future with help of County Counsel's office.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? So moved. Okay, can we get the next item done in 6 minutes?
Steve?
Yeah, next item could be very quickly, actually. Basically, the next item is an update on the CEQA process for River Parkway Master Plan. This item was kind of brought to the board for two reasons. One, we've had some scuttlebutt that we've heard out in the community that the River Park project is a done deal. It's not going to happen any longer because there's a solar farm being installed at one of the sites out there. That is not the case. It couldn't be farther from the truth. Although we do not have, we lost a willing seller for that portion of the regional park. The regional park is moving forward, and the CEQA process is moving forward. You have in your packet is a brief one-line schedule of where we're at with the CEQA process. The CEQA document will be both a programmatic and project level, be a combined effort. Programmatic for the entire 20-mile stretch, which basically means it'll be a $20,000 foot level view of it, and a very focused area for the regional park area, essentially from 4th Street to Hospital Road area. What we have is the project has already kicked off. We've had some meetings that have already occurred and some information that's already taken place. We actually received the draft initial study in our office, and we're reviewing it right now. We actually are coordinating with Janelle and the parks as well, so they're getting a chance to look at that as well. and we're going through that process. So as you can see, we're looking through the schedule here. We hope to have the final EIR for board approval around June of 14, which is about 7 or 8 months from today, which is kind of what we had talked about before, being about a 8 to 12-month process for the environmental document. The initial study that has come out, one of the things that we were looking at was, could it be a mitigated neg deck, or would it have to be a full-blown EIR? And it looks like, at least through the draft document, that it's going to be a full EIR for this particular project. So just wanted to let the board know that process, and let the public know that in spite of losing some acreage out there, the project still is moving forward. It still is going forward full steam, as a matter of fact. And one of the other things I just wanted to mention in brief, I'm sorry I'm rambling a little bit here, is that as we understand the property with the solar farm, they have a 20-year lease for the solar production out there. The park that we are considering out there for the regional park is a master plan that will take some time to bring into full effect. And it's certainly viable or conceivable that when the 20-year lease or 20-year option or the 20-year useful life of that solar facility has reached its end, there may be a way to fold that back into a regional park if there's a willing property negotiation that could happen at that time. There's no promises that we can make to anybody. However, it's something that the project is going to be open enough. It's going to evaluate that property as if it were still available. That way that we can evaluate the whole of the project, and at some point in the future, if it becomes available, it'll be
included.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So that was my report.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, I guess we'll break for lunch.
We don't have to take a motion because it was just a presentation.
Just a presentation.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're good to meet at 1:30, correct? We don't have any.
With Derek.
What, 145?
Yeah, could we do 1:45? So we need a little bit of time to schedule stuff and everything.
1:45? Sure.
Back at 1:45.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. We'll adjourn till lunchtime.
So 1:45 it is, right? No. And then we'll convene in here to discuss the closed session. You know what? Yes. Make them wait. Yeah, make them wait. You know what, Robert? I really have just a lunch day, just a regular lunch day.
Boy, we're not going to take your bar.